So good evening. Why don't we get underway? First off, thank you very much for everyone that was willing to participate in this. As many of you are aware, we started off with approximately 85 people. We had a few folks that deselected themselves, but we had 82 people to select for this group, and as you can imagine, certainly not an easy task. There was a lot of talent out there, the town board wants to thank all of you for taking your time out of your busy schedules, because we know that most of you are not just sitting around with nothing to do, but have very busy and very active lives. So I think I've met everyone. Just in case, I'm Tony LaFountain. I'm the Penfield Town Supervisor, and again, welcome on behalf of our town board. I wanted to take a couple of minutes before I introduce our facilitator to speak a little bit about what we're looking to accomplish as we put this committee in place. So our staff, our ACE crack staff back there that you'll get a chance to meet if you don't already know them, they're going to provide a little bit of history about these two pieces of property. And so as I charge the committee, the thing that I want to make sure that we're not forgetting is that even though Shadow Lake is currently full of golfers and very active and a lot of things going on, and it appears as though is going to have a final sale very shortly, we can't forget that piece of property either. Because 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, we don't want to be back at these tables trying to go through and figure that out again. So both of those properties, Shadow Lake and Shadow Pines, equally important. Obviously, the Shadow Pines piece, as we all see it and drive by it, we're watching the grass starting to grow, and there's not really any activity. And so that's certainly the piece that everyone is going to want to gravitate towards, just based on that being somewhat inactive overall. The main reason why none of the town board members are here is the town board wanted to make sure that this committee had an opportunity to vet out all the thoughts, ideas about the possible uses for these properties, and to come back with recommendations to the town board in some priority order as to what the next steps might be for those properties, whatever that may be. Leave it as it is, some other type of recreational use, some type of development, whether that be residential, whether that be commercial, some combination thereof, mixed use, whatever that is. The board wanted to make sure that they weren't here giving the impression that they're trying to steer you in this direction or that direction. And our staff, as they go through, they'll answer any of your questions. They'll bring in any resources that you might need, or have questions that you might want to ask some experts. But again, this group really is what we're looking for to come to a consensus as to what the next steps are for those two very important pieces of property. Not too many don'ts. One of the don'ts is that we're here to talk about Shadow Lake and Shadow Pines, not the quarry. As part of the moratorium establishment, we define Shadow Lake and Shadow Pines. The quarry is a separate parcel. I get the fact, and the town board gets the fact, that it falls between those two golf courses, but we're not here to talk about what is the end use of the quarry at a point when we know that for about the next 15 to 30 years it's going to be an active quarry. That'll be for another day, and certainly as part of your recommendations, if you say that the town should be taking the next steps here on the heels of this moratorium to take a look at that, certainly that's acceptable, but I don't want to see this committee get bogged down with what's going to be the end use of the quarry overall. So the other piece that the town board wanted me to at least share is that the town of Penfield does not see themselves as operators of a golf course. So in other words, our recreation department is not going to have a golf course section of our recreation department. Certainly if the property is sold and somebody else uses it, a golf course, or if some recommendations are the town be part of that in some way for some recreation uses, we just don't see ourselves operating a golf course overall. We went out and looked for a facilitator. Our sensitivity was we wanted to make sure that everybody felt comfortable that who was leading this process, again, was not just an extension of the town board and trying to steer a particular use or uses. And so we were fortunate enough to identify Ron Peckham. Up until Ron came into town a few weeks ago, I'm not sure he knew where Penfield was. However, what he brings to the table is a lot of experience in facilitation. Professional engineer, has had a great career as a professional engineer, has facilitated meetings like this and bigger, not only across the U.S., but in other countries. And so what he brings to the table is that ability to help ferret out, identify, keep people out of the weeds, and really make this come together for what's going to be in the best interest and the best uses for our community overall. With that, and before I introduce Ron formally, I think all of you might have had an opportunity to meet him, and turn this over to him, I would just take a minute for any questions that anybody has, anything that I can answer or help clear a path for this group as they do their very important work. Wow, great. Okay, so Jim Costello, Mark Valentine, and Zach Nersinger are our staff. Great group of guys, great resources. Don't be afraid to utilize them. Ron Peckham, as I mentioned, is our facilitator. I've had a couple of meetings with him to at least provide him an overview and update of what we're looking to do. But I think you're going to find Ron an excellent facilitator to help lead us through this process. And I think you're going to find him very easy to work with and helping to, again, working to what is the best possible uses for these properties overall. So thank you again for your time on behalf of our town board. Thank you for the hard work that you're going to do here over the next many months, and we look forward to a final product or products that the town board can then take from there. Thank you. Ron?
Great. Thank you, Tony.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe in authenticity and integrity, and Tony was only half right in one thing he said. I do not have a horse in this race or any bias towards it, but I do know where the town of Penfield is because I am a real hacker when it comes to golf. And I was playing in an airport tournament at Shadow Lakes, and it was getting towards dusk, and I was on the second par 3, I can't tell you the number of it, and I teed up the ball, hit the ball, it landed on the green, and I go, "It's on the green! It's on the green!" And just then, a red fox came out, ran across the green, grabbed my ball, and I never saw it again. So that's my only Penfield context. So I would like to welcome you to this committee, and we're going to do some important work, and we're going to have some fun, and we're going to have some laughs. I want you all to know a few things to get started. First of all, this meeting is being recorded, and so they're working on making sure that the sound is right. If they send me a signal that they can't hear an individual because of volume, I'll walk this over to folks to make that happen. Secondly, I'd like you to know from a safety perspective, there's a fire exit back here, and there's another fire exit going down the hall, so you should need to know that. I think everybody who's a Penfield resident knows where the restrooms you passed on the way in. Because our time is so precious, we're only going to be meeting for 2 hours. We're not going to have an official break because by the time we get everyone corralled back, that'll be 20 minutes of our committee time that we're never going to get back. So when you need to take a break for any reason, just feel free to get up and do that. We're just going to press on. So, facilitation. What's that all about? Well, it comes from the Latin word facilis, or the French word facile, and it means to make easy or easier. And depending on how this process goes, it at least needs to be easier than having 24 people come to a room and try to find their direction in a series of 3 or 4 meetings going forward. So, as a facilitator, what's important to know is that I am with the group, but I'm not of the group. You are the group. This is your work that's going forward. You're the folks who will reach a consensus on your recommendation, not me. It's not my report, it's not my recommendation. So I'm with you as your guide to try to help you be more effective and save time and be efficient, but it's really your report and your recommendation. This is a standard facilitator phrase. Usually it says in any book you look it up, neutral, skilled facilitation. I used to have that on all my flip charts, and then I realized that, wait a minute, they'll make their own decision whether there's any skill involved in your facilitation. So just drop it, and at the end of the 4 meetings, you'll make your own judgment about that. My goal is to keep this committee on task and on track. The schedule that you have and you've looked through and looked over says there's 4 meetings plus a public information meeting, and your recommendation is due to the town board on the 29th of July. That seems like a long way away, but as we come into the 10 good weeks that we get in upstate New York, that everybody tries to cram a whole year's worth of living in, things get a little wonky as school winds down and people think about taking a holiday. So there's no time really to waste. Safe environment. My #1 goal is to keep the room safe for engagement. And I will do that with as much skill as I can bring to the table. And I'll try to do it diplomatically and politely, but that is my #1 goal, is to create an environment where everybody feels safe in participating. Second priority is sharing the airtime. Because these meetings are so short, only 120 minutes, and there are 24 of you, do the math, it is really important that we share the airtime as equitably as possible. There are people, I'm sure, in this group and in every group I've ever facilitated that have a desire to take more than their share of the airtime. And whether it's an intention or it just happens, they want to do that. My goal is to try to keep them somewhat limited to their fair share of the airtime so it saves space for the rest. There are also people in this committee who will be reluctant to dive in, push in, and put their ideas on the table. And they may have some of the best ideas in this committee. And so that is one of my chief goals, to try to make that happen. Okay, Tony gave you a little context here. My background is I'm trained as a civil engineer from Clarkson University. I was there when the horse-drawn carriages were going through the streets. I've worked in the built environment for 40 years. That means I've been a consulting engineer in the Syracuse area, primarily, though, traveling around the country building our airport practice. I am passionate about facilitation. It lines up with my skills and my desire to work with smart people and help them get to a better answer faster going forward. And that is about getting clarity from diverse groups. And this happens in the firm with customers across the country, that they're, as one of my mentors says, clarity rises. Okay? It is not digital in this digital world where you flick a switch and all of a sudden the picture is clear. Clarity rises. It's like dialing in a lens until you have the recommendation that you wish. I finished a 6-year term as CEO of the CNS companies on the December 31st, planned transition. So now I'm a part-time chairman of the board, which allows me to have fun working with smart folks like you, doing facilitation and working with people in both in business and in not-for-profit settings. And so that's really about how do we help people who want to make a difference get there faster. Okay, so the first requirement for making a safe environment for a committee to engage is for you to share who you are and a little bit about your context. Okay? Now, if you do the math, I want to keep this to about 24 minutes because there's about 24 people here. So that's 60 seconds apiece. This is not a script for a made-for-TV movie. Okay? And so it needs to be crisp and just say what's important to you, and move on so that people can understand who's at the table and who's on the committee. So it would look a little bit like this. I'm Ron Peckham. I live in Liverpool in the Syracuse area. I am interested in helping this group get to a better answer faster and a recommendation that provides clarity for the town's future. The successful process looks like me being able to create an environment where everybody has a voice. And what do I do for fun? Hang out with my family. But I'm most passionate about meeting the old men at the dock at 5:45 a.m. and wrecking some water before sunrise. So that's Ron Peckham. So whoever wants to go, we can go around if you want, or you can go random, but we just need to continue to move around. Who'd like to go? Just go around? Okay, Craig?
I'm Craig Cockman. I've lived in Penfield for over 30 years. Live on Baird Road, back up to the 13th hole at Shadow Lake. I'm retired from Dolomite after about 20 years at Dolomite. Most of my time there was as the safety director for Dolomite. I'm interested in serving because I'm a neighbor. I care about preserving the environment that we've lived in for quite a while now, and I also have another home on Baird Road that we rent, so I care about that one too. I also have, I think I can bring a perspective on the development of the courses and the Dolomite/Old Castle environment and the board meetings and so forth that would explain why some of the decisions were made or not made, and might be able to help out in that way.
Okay.
And for fun, I play with my grandkids and a lot of paddle tennis and tennis.
Great. So. Thanks, Craig. Neil?
Yeah, my name's Neil Madden. I live in the western part of the town on Park Place. It's off Penfield Road, west of Panorama Plaza. Good question, why I'm interested. So, hey, I saw the notice. I figured I haven't volunteered actively in the town, so it seemed like a good idea at the time. Hey, I don't know what a successful process will look like. I mean, I think, first of all, that assumes that this will be successful, and we're just getting started, so I don't know. I've lived on Park Place for 32 years, and we have grandchildren who are all in town, so that's one of the things I do for fun. And even before I retired, I was a lawyer for 40 years. Several years before I retired, I started volunteering at the George Eastman House as a gardener. I like to garden at my own house, and I go to the George Eastman House. Anybody wants to volunteer with me, see me later.
Great. Thanks, Neil. Jack?
Okay, my name is Jack Kench. I've lived for 14 years on Shadow Lake and Shadow Pines Homeowners Association. I'm presently the president of that association. I think it could be a title for life because nobody else wants it. And we're presently doing roofs, in case anybody wants to learn about roofs. I know Craig from ways back, from tennis, know the Odenbach family somewhat, some of them, and concerned about the values of our property, and being on the 6th hole, it's very convenient. The golf course is something we can use, and I just want to make sure that it's a process that makes sense.
Okay. Carrie? Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Carrie Ivers. I live over in Penshire Circle, which is over near Target in Penfield, or in the Penfield Wegmans area. I am, in my day job, the planning and zoning administrator for the town of Irondequoit, and so I was interested in serving because I can apply that knowledge base here in my own community, which I've not had a chance to do quite yet. I think a successful project or process is one where everybody has an opportunity to talk and to listen, and I think ultimately we come to some consensus about what the future might look like now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and beyond. For fun, I have 4 children, 2 of whom are in the Penfield School District, and so I mostly enjoy hanging out with friends and family and shepherding them to their various activities.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, sure. My name's Tom Rocco. I live close to Jack, and I hope he lives long and prospers, because I don't want to be president. I'm a doc, a cardiologist. I came here in 1983 for 3 to 4 years and blinked, and I'm here 30 years later. What's a successful process? I hope it has legs and it has legacy, because that's what I'm sort of interested in. At my age, it's about quality of life and legacy. What do I do for fun? 4 grandkids with 2 on the way, and some tennis and some golf and mentoring.
Great. Excellent. Yes.
I'm Ann Zeke. I live on Treebrook Drive, and I was interested in serving because I'd like to be part of the process rather than feel like at the end I wish I could have done something or known more about the whole process and how they arrived, what they looked at and how they arrived at their conclusions. I think it's a pretty aggressive schedule. I think it's going to be tough for us to meet that, but I think we can be successful. And for fun, I work out and garden and read.
Awesome. Thanks, Ann.
My name's Mike Shivari. I live on Colonial Drive, back up to the 12th hole, the green. I'm interested in serving. Obviously, it's close to me, but I have a young family that I'm raising in Penfield. I don't want to go anywhere. I love the community, and I want to help with a decision that's going to help Penfield long term. You know, I think it's an important undertaking that we have here, and it's whatever happens is going to change things, change the direction. So I think it's really important. And I guess a successful process for me is, you know, that we can hopefully make an impact that's positive for the community. For fun, I've got 3 kids. I like to spend time with them in their sports. I am a golfer, so I try to spend some time hitting the ball around, and I love photography.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah.
I'm Dan McCusker. I've been in Penfield for 20 plus years. I live on Sawmill Drive, and I'm interested in this because the impacts of permit proposals on the table can be significant, not just to our community, but our transportation system, the whole ball of wax. I'm a civil engineer also, so I have a transportation slant on this. What does a successful process look like? One where everybody's engaged and feels like they're participating in a meaningful way. And what do I do for fun? Play with my kids and barbecue.
Great. Excellent. So I want you to know, in being honest here, we have now passed the point where I can read the name tag. So please do not be offended when I don't call you by name. I can't see that, so.
I'm Heidi Rasmussen. I'm born and raised. I've never left Penfield except for to go off to college. Came back. I live out in East Penfield on Gloria Drive. My dad's straight up farmer. Live out on the farm. Bought my grandparents' house. And why am I interested in serving? I obviously, born and raised, care what goes on here in Penfield. And want to be involved in any way that I possibly can. I also inherited some of my dad's farmland, agricultural land. So learning more about all this process is obviously important to me. And let's see, again, successful process, the coach in me, again, listening, being team together. What do I do for fun? I coach my babies lacrosse.
Awesome. Now I want to go back to Todd, and then Todd, after you introduce yourself, if you move over here, there's a space for you. Yep.
My name's Todd Mahaley. I've lived in Penfield for the majority of my life. I live on Harwood Circle, which backs up to the 5th hole. I've been an avid golfer at Shadow Pines the last 4 years. I've been a member. My family really enjoy backing up to the Pines, not just during golf season, but in the winter, snowshoeing, sledding, all that. It's a big reason why I'm interested in serving this committee, is to make sure that whatever decision is made, that it's a group decision, that this board, this committee, that agrees with the town, and hopefully that's an agreement with Oldcastle and Dolan Lake going forward. For fun, obviously I golf. I have 2 young children. One of them Heidi coaches in lacrosse. The other one's involved in Penfield rec sports. So we're involved in Penfield, and we hope we can help this area.
Great. Thanks, Todd.
I'm Jim Olmsted, and Ron, you're not the only Clarkson engineer in the room. I have lived in Penfield for 24 years. I've been on the Conservation Board for about 20. Currently the chair of the Conservation Board. Yes, we're interested in conserving what we have here in Penfield for recreational space and open space. I do golf. And I do follow the activities of my grandchildren. I think I may have the title of the oldest guy in the room. So one of my grandkids is about to go off to Australia. So
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Wayne?
I'm Wayne Smith. I live over on Wheelock, which is right behind the high school. I'm interested in serving because I kind of have a unique role of being a teacher in the district of Penfield. I have kids in the district of Penfield. I coach in Penfield. So I take a lot of different hats and wear it daily. And I feel like because I'm not leaving and I have such a stake in the community, serving on this it just seems logical to see how it moves forward. Being that coach and that teacher in the district, I do think that a good process is one where everyone is heard and has a say in how this moves forward. And for fun, I like camping.
Great. Thanks, Wayne.
Yeah.
So I would ask you folks to participate, and if these don't apply exactly, just say what you want the team to know.
We thought we were going to ad-lib a little bit.
Good. Yeah, do it.
Sure, and I'll start. My name's Zach Nersinger. I'm the town planner. I've been here for 5 years. Skipping ahead, I think what Carrie said was perfect about it, seeing how we have a very similar job title. Having a good conversation with everyone involved about all the options, all the possibilities, and as the supervisor said as well, what this could look like 5, 10, 20 years from now. I think that's very important for the committee, and I am here, just like Ron, to help facilitate. We all are to help facilitate and give everyone the tools they need, the information they need to make this a successful process as we look forward.
Thank you.
What do you do for fun?
For fun, I do many things.
You just climbed the Grand Canyon yesterday.
Yeah, I did some hiking. I just got back from Arizona yesterday. A lot of outdoor stuff. I coach. I play soccer. I stay active, so I can appreciate all the recreational opportunities that a town can provide for its residents. Go ahead, Mark.
My name is Mark Valentine. I'm the town engineer. My role and our role here is to provide you guys with what information you need. We'll be doing an overview tonight of some of the infrastructure in the area, updating and doing a little brief education on what zoning districts are, just to try to kind of set the playing field for everybody. Obviously, some are in the business, some are not in the business, but our job is to provide whatever information you guys need in order to help facilitate the conversation, keep the conversation going. Please feel free to contact me and or my staff, and we'll reiterate this at the end at any time, should you want or need additional information provided.
I'm Jim Costello. I'm the Director of Developmental Services for the town. I have been here for 37 years, which is kind of nice because I was here when Shadow Pines and Shadow Lake were under development, so I've got that history. That's one of the reasons why I'm here, because I've worked with many, many committees over the years in Penfield. They've all been great committees. Some wonderful things have come out of those committees, and I expect that to be the case here as well. Success, again, is having everybody in the room contribute, having everybody's word heard, having everybody be respectful of each other as they're making their decisions and making their recommendations. And what do I do for fun? I have a home in Penfield, but now my kids have homes in Penfield, so I get to work on their homes now instead of mine. So that's my fun.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
I'm Jim Froome. Like Jim, I lived on Shadow Pines when it was before it was built, so I've been there for 35 years. Now I live maybe 100 yards from the 6th green. I've moved just a little bit away for the last 5 years. I'm interested in this because I'm basically just kind of retiring the last few years, slowing down. And my whole life I thought I was going to retire and play golf at Shadow Pines and Greystone. We've lived on the golf course. Our neighbors have, some have bought in. Many people here have just bought houses the last 5-10 years, and they bought it because of the maturity and the open space in the area. So a successful process to me is doing everything you're talking about in terms of getting along with everybody, but coming up something that benefits the town and the town's plan, both from the open space and everything that's been in these master plans for the last, I think there's been 5 of them for the last 50, since 1966 was the first one. What do I do for fun? I do lots of things. I golf. I used to play a little tennis. I'm the proud new grandpa, and I think I'm up to about 10 drones now. I have camera drones, so I do a lot of flying and video and photography.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
I'm Tom Putnam. I live at 25 Chippenham Drive in Penfield, up by 250 in Whalen. I've been in Penfield for 7 years, but I sit on this table carrying the hat of superintendent of the Penfield Central School District. Why am I interested in serving? Because the impact of development in Shadow Pines will impact the school, and I want to make sure that the district is represented, and as well this committee has the district in order to answer any questions on impact. Successful process, I think everybody's hit it, which is that it's engaging and that there's some type of consensus at the end. What I do for fun is actually I want to make aware that I'll let John Piper introduce himself, but I'll give him a little preview, which is he's our school board president, and these meetings like tonight fall on a school board meeting night, so I'm going to have to step out, but either John or I will be here on those school budget or school board meetings. What I do for fun is attend school board meetings. But I also have 2 great kids, a 2nd grader and 3rd grader, who attend school in Penfield, and any chance I can to spend time with them and my wife is I don't care what we're doing as long as we're together. So,
thank you.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
John Piper, I'm here as Tom mentioned, president of the Penfield Board of Education. Certainly here for the concern of our close to 5,000 students. I actually live in the town of Brighton, in which 20% of the students in the Penfield School District come from Brighton, which, in case you didn't know that. Certainly, I think a successful process looks like one where everyone will be heard. In my private life, I'm a mediator in private practice, so I believe that's important. What do I do for fun? As Tom knows, I have twin seniors graduating this year. I've looked at every college on the East Coast. They're graduating in June, actually on one of our meeting nights, and my oldest daughter's getting married in July, so that takes up the fun part of this year.
Thanks, John.
Great. I'm Sam Ogie. I live at 1924 Clark Road. That's the other big white house on Clark Road next to the Clark House. We're surrounded by the golf course, the 7th, 8th, and 9th greens, fairways, and tee. I wanted to serve on this committee because when my wife and I moved back to Rochester in 2004, we looked for a community and a home that we thought we could spend the rest of our lives in. And we found that at 1924 Clark Road. And so the change that may or may not happen really will influence the character of the community. And to me, a successful process is a process that results in consensus around a proposal that would maintain the character of that community, because I'm sure many other people here and many people in the community chose Penfield because of what Penfield is. And so we have an interest in trying to keep that character as best we can. I have 3 little kids. My wife and I both work, so you can imagine, just like Carrie and others here, our lives revolve around working in the kids. But I do manage to find about 4 days a year to go hunting. So that is my hobby, 4 out of 365.
I'm Art Patron. I live at 9 Field Oak Lane in Newbury Park. My background is I've got about 20 years experience in sports turf and golf course management. Some of that as a golf course superintendent. So I bring a little bit of a different twist to this. I'm interested in serving, 1, because I do have some background in it, but 2, I want to be part of the solution, really creating a long-term plan for this, for the town. I love the outdoors, so I don't want to see it change a whole lot, but, things evolve. What do I do for fun? My daughter plays lacrosse and volleyball. I chase her around, and I love to water ski and fish.
I'm Laura Downey. I live at 84 Skyview Lane, which I'm actually neighbors with Tom. We back up to the 5th hole at Shadow Pines. I'm in Sam's camp. We actually found our house via the golf course. My husband wasn't looking for a house, he was looking for a house next to a golf course. So I think it didn't matter what the house looked like. He saw where it was on Shadow Pines, and he was sold. So we too had this vision of our family growing up, where our house is now. And I'm very sad to say that vision has been diminished when, over the last few weeks when we heard the news. So this is the least that we felt our family could do, was to sign up to be part of this. My background is in marketing, and my accountant says that I seem to be retired at this point because I'm actually running my own business. I'm a cooking instructor, so I do that for fun as well as my business. But I'm serving because I kind of miss this environment of coming together as a committee to have a focus and a purpose, and I'm really looking forward to the process and a successful outcome.
Great, thanks.
I'm Bob Peterson at 1931 Clark, which is across from the 9th Tee of Shadow Pines. We built our house there about 30 years ago. Built it there because of the golf course being across the street. I've been a resident of Penfield for 50 years, and all but 2 of those years I've been in the blast zone of the quarry, so the quarry's not been a problem for me as long as the golf courses were there as a buffer zone. I'm very sad what I do for fun. I worked at Kodak for approximately 30 years in manufacturing finance. After that, retired. I did some volunteering, 7 years at building houses with Habitat for Humanity, and now I'm a handyman at the Shepherd Home, the hospice done by you, right?
Yes, that's true.
And I'm very sad. What I do for fun is golf in the summer, shovel snow in the winter, and I'm very, very sad to see Shadow Pines go. The back 9 of Shadow Pines is one of the finest 9 holes available for public golfers anywhere in upstate New York. It's a really a jewel. Sad to see it go, and I don't know, Todd, how long we have before we lose it, but a successful outcome for me would see Shadow Pines remain as a golf course and continue to operate, and second best was to have that land be retained as open space available for public use. And I think I covered it.
Okay, thank you.
I started my business, a computer business, in 1971 in Penfield on 5 Mile Line Road in a small building, 2136. As we grew, we acquired a couple other old buildings, including the old Penfield Town Hall, which we still have. We've now turned it into an art gallery. And I raised my family on 5 Mile Line Road. I actually moved in 1975 at the corner of Whalen and 5 Mile Line Road, and it backs right up to the quarry there. And we have a pool, and I was told that they were going to only blast for another 20 years, but it's been 40 years since I moved in, and 41, and I think they'll be blasting another 20. But when they do that, they put a crack in our pool pretty regularly, but I've reconciled that with putting a line in the pool. But also I was very concerned about widening 5 Mile Line Road. My daughter also lives across from the high school with my 2 grandkids, both in the high school. And years ago, we were on a committee called CRASH, Citizens Reaction Against Superfluous Highways. We prevented the widening of 5 Mile Line Road through consensus. And I know that when citizens get together with a common purpose, we can prevent a lot of things from happening. And the town is always very responsive to the input that you give them. So I'm hopeful it'll be the same here as what we experienced there. I'm also involved with the YMCA. I was the chairman of the board for the first 5 years, and I'm actively involved, as Jack is, and many of you hopefully go there as well. And I think it's a big addition to the community, and the town's been great in allowing us to do that. We got the approval through the town 10 years ago now.
Great. Don?
I'm Don Crum. I live at 1001 Whalen Road, which is an old house I've been restoring for years. I'm interested in serving because it's my neighborhood, and also I'm on the Historic Preservation Board. I'm not sure what a successful process looks like, but I guess it would be one that at the end of the day I feel we've accomplished something. What I do for fun for the last 25 years is work on that house. So that's it.
Thanks, Don.
My name is Bob Serkey. I live at 5 Burning Tree Lane. Not very much in the vicinity there. I've been a Penfield resident for just over almost 15 years. Actually grew up on the other side of the tracks in the town of Greece, but as my wife and I moved home, we settled here in Penfield, and have kind of set our roots in, as I've been told, even though putting red on sometimes throws me off a little bit, but I don't mind Penfield red. A successful process looks like what many of you have said: open communication, listening, but I might also throw in non-judgmental with everyone's opinions, ideas. And what I do for fun, I have an 11, 8, and 2-year-old. So pretty much their fun is my fun, and I'm involved in various youth sports groups that they are.
Great. Thanks, Bob.
Well, that concludes our group therapy session for tonight. Thanks for coming, and safe drive home. Just kidding. That's a perfect example of engineer humor, which is a contradiction in terms. So we're going to press on here. How are we going to work effectively together? Well, first of all, we talked about the safe environment, and I know for a fact, given, and you, first of all, let me affirm, you did excellent on time management. Thank you so much, because that saves more time for the meat of the meeting. You did excellent on that, but you now have context, and context is where people are entering the room, what they've done, what they've experienced, what they hope for, etc. And while it was only 60 seconds, each of you have more context about the folks that are on your team going forward. So now that you have that context, how will we interact with one another? First of all, here are some ground rules, and I just put these down here for you to throw fruit at, only because in the interest of time, I want to get to these really smart guys at the end of the table to share with you real hard information. First of all, we want to have one conversation in the room. Native Americans used to have something called the talking stick, and they would pass the stick from person to person, and whoever had the talking stick got to talk, and everybody else got to listen. The more the conversation breaks down into separate conversations, the less effective it's going to be, and the more time we're going to waste circling back to get that person's input into the circle. Secondly, speak for yourself. This is how you feel. Please don't say everybody in my neighborhood, because I'm pretty sure everybody in your neighborhood doesn't feel the same about anything, okay? So in order to be clear, speak with passion, speak your heart, speak for yourself to throw into the crucible of ideas for this conversation. Second, we're going to share the airtime as best as possible, and I'm going to be diplomatic in trying to marshal that, and that if we have to be more direct, we'll do that. I would ask that you be hard on ideas and soft on people. Hard on ideas and soft on people. The idea of a conversation crucible meaning something that refines a metal to a higher level, and by doing that there's usually heat that is involved in that. There's usually dross, which is scum, impurities that come to the top, and what is left is something that is finer and more valuable going forward. And so the idea is that when we're talking about things, we're going to be hard on the ideas and easy on people. Now, there's two things that I notice that happens in groups sometimes. First of all, somebody puts an idea out and they put it in the crucible, and people start turning the heat up on that idea, and the person who has pride of authorship or of ownership of that jumps in the hot crucible to save it, okay? Because this is their baby, this is their idea. Please stay out of the crucible. It's just an idea. It may be your truth, but it's not the truth for the whole group yet, okay? It's just about getting to a better conversation and idea. Secondly, every once in a while, we'll get people who want to take that person and throw them in the crucible with their idea. And that's off limits, okay? We want to have just the idea in the center. The pyramid of priorities. This is how I make sense in group settings, okay? And it's nothing more than putting first things first. And just frankly, it looks a little bit like this. In the pyramid of priorities, Tony gave you a purpose and a charge for this group. And that is to come up with a consensus set of recommendations that go to the town upon which they will make a decision. These are recommendations. You're not the decider, as George W. would say. These are recommendations to the town of your best thoughts and work together. And not everybody will agree, but the goal is to get as many people to the consensus as possible. And if there needs to be more recommendations than just one, then we'll sort that out. We'll figure out what that looks like based on the group. Number one priority, top of the food chain. Next is, how is this working for the team, the committee, the men and women that are on the team? Is this conversation helpful? Is this direction helpful? Are you going in the right direction together? If I look around and see body language and eye rolls and things that this is not helpful to a fair number of folks, then we have to say, time out. Got to do a process check. What's happening here? How are people feeling? And how do we get back on track for the will of the group? Because the most precious resource that we're going to have between now and the 29th of July is your time and your engagement and your energy, and we want to protect that. Finally, we all got ideas, right? We come into the room with 2 bags packed full of ideas and values and thoughts and opinions, and that's cool. You were invited to this circle because of the diversity of your ideas. But if we have to make a decision, this trumps everything, this trumps this, okay? And so that's how we're going to make decisions going forward. Hi, Mom. Oh. There's 4 cameras around here, so. Okay, parking lots help us keep on track for the journey. And you may have heard them as bin lists, you may have heard them in a lot of other things. But when this group gets focused on talking about something and somebody puts something on the table which is really a side trip or a rabbit hole, or call it whatever you want, it's important for us to stay on track and run this down. I will capture that on a parking lot board and we'll put it over here. I can't promise you because of the time pressure that we'll deal with it in that meeting, but we will get to it. Okay? It's an important idea. We'll capture it and we'll figure out how it fits in for the best, for the good of the group. Finally, we live in a digital age and everybody is in electronic bondage. And so they are what you have. You have one or many of them, whatever they are. I would ask you that the standard in the circle here is either off or silent. If you want to have it on vibrate, please put it on your person. Because the last thing we need is here, because it destroys everybody's focus. If you need to use this, use it absolutely as much as you want. Just use it outside the room, because we're going to press on and we're going to stay focused on the idea going forward. So, are there any other ground rules that you want to see on the list, based on your experience in the town of Penfield or other team settings?
I guess I got a question.
Yeah.
So it's our first meeting, and now we're going to deliver something on July 29th.
Yep.
In 5 meetings after this one.
Yep.
I guess that's a surprise to me, given that it's a 1-year moratorium, which we've eaten up 45 days of. This seems kind of a rushed process. That's a concern I've got.
Okay.
You know,
So
I mean, I guess we haven't got through the first meeting, but because I mean, from my perspective, it's first of all, it's like the old Dragnet show. I'd like to gather the facts. I think a lot of people have got feelings about this, but really we need to gather the facts. If we can do this in 6 meetings, great, but I guess I'm saying I'm a little bit from Missouri on that.
Well, we'll see where that is. That's the schedule that was laid out for me. You're right, the moratorium was the 23rd of March. There are processes that will take place before it concludes, and the goal was to get the committee's recommendation into the hopper for the town to consider in order to make sure that they didn't fall short on the other end. It can always be changed, but that was the charge of the committee to try to be done by the end of July. There's also something else that will happen, Neil, and that is that there are many smart people here, but they all have lives that are important. And committees lose interest. And if we do not keep up the energy and the momentum going forward, then there are people in this room that will say, I got enough meetings to go to. I'm not showing up anymore. And then it defeats the purpose of the diversity of this committee. So we'll have to kind of feel our way along. I'm going to go to the schedule next, and we'll know by the end of the third meeting whether we have any chance of meeting this expectation or not, and then we'll go from there. From a ground rules perspective, Neil, is there anything on the ground rules other than the schedule being too tight from interaction with people in the room? Is there anything here that causes you concern?
No.
Okay. Are there any other ground rules that you want to have up here? Yes, Bob.
I don't know how to put this. I have a problem with the ground rule that Tony laid out, that any thoughts of discussing the quarry is off limits. For me, I don't see how we can consider long-term use of the properties adjacent to the quarry unless we have some concept of what the quarry's going to be at the end of 35 years or whatever. Is it going to be a destination? Is it going to be an attractive swimming hole? Will it be a landfill? Will it be a safety hazard? High cliffs with water, 50, 100 feet down with fence around it. Not that we want to impede the operations of the quarry, but just sort of understand what it becomes at the end of its operation. I sort of think we have to know that before we can decide what's the best use of Shadow Pines and Shadow Lake.
I hear your concern.
So maybe you can ask Tony about that.
Well, I would think it'd be better for you to ask Tony.
Tony, I'm asking you, please reconsider that.
Okay. So the issue here is this is how the conversation will go, but your issue is really not a ground rule for committee action. Okay. Your issue is with the charge to the committee.
I'm struggling with how am I going to consider these potential land uses without knowing that.
Yes, I hear you. Okay. And so I hear Neil says I'm concerned about the time and the schedule, and I hear you saying about the narrowness of the charge.
Yes.
Okay. As a facilitator, those are outside of what I've been asked to lead. Okay? So I can definitely communicate those, but I don't have any authority over that.
Right. Understand.
But you're on record that's a concern. As we interact with each other, are there any other ground rules that you want on here? Are there any that you can't support? Yes.
This doesn't have to do with the ground rules, but I think Bob's concern, at least, is a concern for me as well.
Okay.
And I know Jim well. We've talked about this before. So I think this is more than just Bob being concerned. And we can't know what's going to happen to the quarry, but I think we actually at least have to consider what the possibilities are. We can't be divorced from discussion of the quarry. And I mean, I think if we try to do that, you're going to have a hard time facilitating because it's going to keep coming back.
Well, then we have to address it early on, Sam, because the charge of this committee is not to deal with the quarry.
Well, there's a difference between making a recommendation about the quarry and talking about what the possible outcomes of the quarry and how they relate to the use of Shadow Pines and Shadow Lake.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get this back. I want to cook this off. And then what we can do, we're going to let's get these ground rules done, and then we have at least 3 people who have real concern about the quarry. Then what I'd like to do is go over the schedule, let these gentlemen present information for everybody, and then there's going to be some time for questions and answers. And I hear you, that's been spoken clearly, that's something to be passed back to the town. But I'm not presently authorized to entertain conversations about the quarry. That's a brutal fact. So, any others that you can't live with up here on the way we interact with each other? Okay, so that's the way we're going to try to make it happen. I'll leave that right there for now. Okay, so Neil brought up the schedule, and as you can tell, for those of you who are keeping track, I did not, I moved it to later on because I wanted to maintain momentum of the meeting. What the town has asked me for is to help facilitate 4 meetings for your group. The vision and the dates are there and the location. I would say that the dates of these meetings are not cast in concrete, but they are packed in sand, okay? It's not totally inviolate, but it was made around what's happening in the town and meeting nights and other things that they know are happening. And there was one night that I was not available on the Tuesday night. That's why it went to the Monday night that I'm traveling. So that's the tentative schedule, and as we get to the end of this meeting, if people have strong feelings about one meeting or date, then let's process that and make that happen. You'll notice that there's a public information meeting. The public is, it's open for the public to come and observe the work of the committee, but they're not part of the committee. And so if we allow public engagement at each of the meetings, you're not going to get anywhere. So there is a public information meeting that's been scheduled in June. The reason we scheduled it after the 3rd meeting was because this is your committee and it's your recommendation. And so while you won't be done with your work, if you are a member of the town and you're curious about it, they will be interested. So what's the committee doing, and where are they so far, and what kinds of things are they considering? And so it will be important for the committee to make a brief presentation at that meeting, just to say, where are you? What are you considering? What are you looking at? What are your concerns? And then that's just a method of context for the people who come to the meeting, and then they get to say what they feel, because they're not on the Select Citizens Committee, and that's the intention of the town, to give them a voice. So that's why the schedule was laid out that way.
Ron?
Yes, sir.
Will there be call-in availability if we're out of town?
I don't know.
I appreciate it if there would be.
Okay, yeah. I really don't know. They're listening downstairs in the super secret mixing room. So I've been very impressed with the technology that's at play here, so I'm assuming there would be, but I don't know. Thanks, Tom. Other questions about the schedule or process? One piece that I neglected to lay out, I believe, but this is really how the committee wants to do this, because there is enough work to be done, and there is probably going to be diversity of opinion as to what the scenarios of development are. It's my vision that after we get in a couple meetings, at the end of the 2nd meeting, we'll test for the passion of different people that are in the room, and we'll see if it's appropriate to have some subcommittees that say, we want to work on this alternative or this recommendation, okay? And they will do a deeper dive, as opposed to, well, we just think you should buy them both and run them as a golf course. That is not what the town is looking for. They're looking for some thoughtful ideas and recommendations going off into the future, and not for you to solve the problem, but at least to identify what the parts and pieces are. And there are some people who will say, I'm really interested in this scenario, and I want to work on that committee, and some on another, but I don't know that yet. We'll see where that goes. And so while we are large group, I expect that in the process we'll go to small groups, at least in part, and then in the last meeting on the 12th of July, we'll go back to large group, because we have to then collate and integrate what the consensus of the group is, whether it's one or many recommendations going forward. So that's the process. What concerns do you have about the process?
Not a concern, a question.
Yep.
Should we have emails so that we can share on days in between the meetings?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's right there.
It's coming
Yep.
around. Okay.
Yep.
It was in the folder.
Oh, is it in there?
Yes. Other questions on process? And this is draft. I mean, this is just before you enter the room. This is our best guess of what would be crisp and tidy for your voices to be heard.
What's the
Yes,
thought
Karen?
about communication in between the meetings? Would you prefer that all the communication happen in the room together at one time, at least in the early phases? Or do you want folks to be communicating with each other outside of this group?
I'm really open to how you want to work the process going forward. This is your committee, and whatever the committee wants, I'm cool with. My goal here is, as you talk through how you want to move it ahead, is to ask questions that may help you get to something that's more crisp going forward and that keeps everybody lined up. But that's really your call going forward. Yeah, Ray.
We are a committee, but ultimately we may be a composition of subcommittees. Normally, to get things done, the committees, the smaller groups get it done better. I do a sports analogy. A basketball team of 5 people, they can be creative because you can keep track of everybody else on the floor and look for the open guy. Football team with 11 people, you got to have a meeting between each play, and half the time they have a missed assignment. So it's got to be a smaller number than 11 to get stuff done.
Okay. I'm totally cool with that. That was, our vision was that it would be, this would get to a subcommittee pretty quickly, but that's really how you feel. Yes, Jim.
I assume anybody that has an idea what they would like to see is going to have to try to justify it a little bit, which means web pages, PDF documents. Is the town going to supply us with a Dropbox or a place for us to share? Like if I had something I wanted to share with everybody, since I only have 5 minutes to talk, it might be a 10-minute article, I'd like to put it out there for you to read it.
Okay.
How are we going to share that?
How would you want to share that?
Want to do Google Docs? I mean, do you guys, does the town?
We've done that with the mixed-use committee. We had a Google Docs group, either communication back and forth or spot you can post
So
documents.
for folks who don't know Google Docs, you can have a Google Drive where there's a folder that anybody can have access to, and you could see anything that was uploaded into there. You could upload files. So if there's some place where we're going to have a consolidation of documents, I don't know if that's...
We use it. We use Google Drive to facilitate documents between our planning board right now.
Okay.
That's something we can also investigate setting up for this committee.
And it could be
or
like
if
maybe
someone wants to
a
take that on
lot
the
or
committee.
shared just among the emails that we have.
We do have Dropbox, but storage is more limited on that. They've been throttling that down a lot lately.
Right.
So I found that Google Drive's been much more accommodating for what we do. Again, we can help. If someone on the committee wants to take charge for that, we can do that as well. It's starting to count, it's 15 gigs free. So there are options.
Okay. So I was trying to capture those 3 things. You've got a solution for sharing documents? Okay. So did that work for you, Carrie?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So did I miss anything? Tight schedule, Corey out of the charge, communication between meetings.
Subcommittees.
Subcommittees? Yeah, so Ray, I didn't mean to forget that. I came into the room thinking there would be subcommittees, so that's why it didn't pop up. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yes, Zach.
Just to close the door on the Google Drive, just talking over here quickly, we'll take the charge on that to set it up with everybody's emails, as long as everyone's provided their email probably. We'll set that up and give everyone access to a folder or subfolders for documents that come up. I'll have access to it and make sure everything's organized so people can see it as well. Okay?
Okay, great, thanks, Zach. Okay, are we ready to move on to hear some information from the town? Okay, let's take it away.
Thank you, Ron. Most of you have been around for a long, long time in Penfield and are pretty familiar with both golf courses. There's some things you may or may not know. I did prepare in your packet, I prepared several resolutions that have been generated by various boards over the last 30, 35 years relating to both golf courses. And our secretary, Allison, was good enough to collate all of these, put notes on to say which is which, and to give you an idea that these golf courses just didn't appear magically overnight, and there was a lot of thought that went into them. There was a lot of approval processes that took place over the years. There was a lot of neighbor input through that process. Ironically enough, and actually Jim brought to my attention several months ago the fact that back in the 1970s that the town of Penfield actually established a task force similar to this to determine what to do with Shadow Lake, because at one point in time, as you all know, it was owned by Dolomite as a quarry. There was some drainage problems associated with the property. They were getting a lot of water into the quarry on a regular basis. They were having problems just maneuvering, logistically operating the quarry. After a period of time, that quarry closed down. The fields around it were kind of fallow and easy to get access to the quarry if you're 16 years old. Not so easy if you're 56 years old. Became a problem over the years because the quarry was a popular hangout for a lot of kids. Some really crazy things were going on over there that became a nuisance to the town, became a nuisance to the neighbors, and also became a liability issue to the Dolomite Corporation. And in the 70s, the town did create this task force. They met for probably about 4 months from what I can see. I didn't see any minutes to the committee meetings, but I think what occurred after about the third meeting, the Odenbach family decided that it was to their best interest and the community's best interest just to open up a golf course. So they made a recommendation that the golf course be located at that site. The community supported it wholeheartedly. They went to the town board with a recommendation. Within a 4-month period, Dolomite had actually hired an architect to design the course. They came to the town board as early as September of '77 to talk to the town board about it. The town board at that time had jurisdiction over the approval of golf courses in the town of Penfield. They received an approval shortly thereafter, and Shadow Lake was starting under construction as early as 1978. I got here in 1980, and it was almost done. I'm not sure they were playing on it yet, but it was almost done. And through that period of time, other things have occurred. That they've come to the town asking for the executive course to be installed. They built a clubhouse on the site. Ironically, I found out yesterday the clubhouse is actually smaller in size than the one at Shadow Pines. Shadow Pines actually has a finished downstairs area, so it comes out to about 16,000 square feet. The one at Shadow Lake is actually about 9,600 square feet. So in addition to that, they had platform tennis placed on the property. They have volleyball services. They did build some service buildings to accommodate storage facilities and maintenance equipment. That has operated in compliance with the code all the years it's been in place. And that operation is still in compliance as they operate today. I did give you these documents so that you have a chance to take them home and look at them. One of the reasons I did give them to you is to show you there's been a lot of interaction between the Dolomite and Odenbach family over the years with the town of Penfield. The other thing I did it for was because I wanted you to understand there's been comments over the last several months about there must be deed restrictions in there to make it remain a golf course. They must have things in there to hold this in place for an inordinate period of time. That is not true. I think what happened in 1977 is the exact same thing that happened in 1983. I think the town of Penfield and the residents were so pleased that a golf course was being put in place. They basically, worked with the Dolomite company to do whatever had to be done to make sure that golf course was put in place and was still functional for the community. The same thing occurred in 1983 when I was actually here during the approval process. We were elated by the fact that they were willing to build another golf course. They were going to protect the Clark House. The Clark House is a designated landmark. It's a local landmark. It's not a state or a federal landmark, but it is a local landmark, and it still has all of the protection that the state or the federal landmarks would have in our eyes. So that building, and we can go through some of the stuff that went on there, but that building was designated in 1986. It falls under all the categories of a designated building. Designated buildings in the town of Penfield have the ability to be used for commercial purposes. The Daisy Flour Mill was the first building of that nature. That was an old mill. It was designated, and then it was converted into a restaurant and now a catering operation. It falls under the same category as the Clark House. The Clark House can act on its own. It's a separate parcel. It's on a 5.7 acre parcel. It can act on its own. If somebody wanted to come in and continue to utilize it as a golf club, they certainly have every right to do that. If somebody new came in to operate it, we would require them to obtain a permit, a special permit to do that, so that we know who they are and what they want to do there is in compliance with the town's requirements and is not a detriment to the neighbors around it. If somebody wants to come in and do something different with it, such as office space or even a small restaurant, they have the right to do that as well, based on the fact that there is a permit issuance process in our ordinance under the Historic Preservation Code to allow these historic buildings to be utilized for commercial purposes. Yes?
Can it go back to single-family residence?
Yes, it could. It absolutely could. The properties, as you know, both the Shadow Lake property and the Shadow Pines property are zoned R-1-20. They've been that way since 1929 when the first code came into effect. And those are basically half-acre lots on single-family detached parcels. If somebody wanted to come in and convert it back into a residence, they'd have every right to do that. They would get a permit to do it, but they would still be allowed to do that at their convenience. The course stands on its own. If somebody wants to continue to operate the course, if somebody walked in tomorrow and bought it, they would, if they were a different group than Dolomite, obviously, or the Odenbachs, they would have to get a special permit to operate it, but certainly the town would be supportive of that if that were the case. Right now, the permit still stands. It's in place right now until such time as somebody else comes in to buy the property for whatever use it is, but we would not require somebody to come in right now. If, for instance, Dolomite wanted to open that back up again this year, they'd have every right to go ahead and just do that.
There's another property just north of there, this Pioneer Graveyard or something like that.
Yes, that property.
What's the status of that?
That property is owned by the town of Penfield. We bought that several years ago. I believe it's 600 Wayland Road. We do maintain it. I think there is the Historical Society goes in every so often. You'll see wreaths put on the gravestones.
That's not part of the sale.
It is not. It is strictly town of Penfield property. That's right.
The Clark House is not listed for sale as a separate parcel, is it? It's listed by the realtor as part of Shadow Pines.
That's right. Right now they're looking to sell.
Including a historical clubhouse,
yeah,
right?
They're looking to sell all the property at one time.
Okay, but that could be split off.
It absolutely could. As a matter of fact, it is on its own separate parcel, so it certainly could be split off with no problem.
And is there any update on the status of potential buyers or sales?
Haven't heard a word. I know there's several people interested, but it's, as I was saying to Tony and to Mark earlier today, the developers have not come to us upset by the fact that this committee's in place for a year or so to determine what's going on, because I have a feeling that they're asking a lot for the property, and I'm thinking there's a lot of people out there that cannot buy it on their own. We've talked to a couple of developers, we've talked to people interested in all sorts of things, but they appear to be looking for other people to help them purchase the property.
Jim, are they proposing the possibility of using the back nine for housing development? How would they get access off either Clark or Wayland Road?
Well, right now, I will tell you, the town board has not had any privy knowledge to this situation. At one time, several months ago, we had a meeting one morning in this room. We have a project review committee that meets every Wednesday morning. And we review various projects or potential projects that come to the town of Penfield and give input back as to how they may or may not comply with what the town's looking to do, or how the codes are affecting the project. And they did show us a project where there was a potential for about 255 homes on the two sites, on the front nine and the back nine. The back nine is a little problematic because there's a lot of environmental sensitivity to that area, steep slopes, woodlots, wetlands, that are going to not be allowed to be developed in any case, depending on what comes out of this meeting. The big issue is that Dolomite and Oldcastle have required, no matter who buys it or what they buy it for, has required a buffer around all of the existing residences that are situated around the golf course. So the plan that we saw, and it was just a preliminary sketch plan basically, there was no engineering associated with it, did show a 100-foot buffer on the lots that were going to be constructed in their minds on that site. But Dolomite has required that whoever buys it does have a buffer around the property.
If they came up with 255 homes, how many would have been on the front nine versus the back nine?
That's a good question. I don't remember.
It wouldn't be much room for many on the back nine.
No, and they showed areas on the back nine where there was nothing developed because of the sensitivity. They did take into account our environmental protection overlay districts. They took into account the size of lots that have to be on corners versus ones that aren't. They did do a good job in terms of what they had to do to meet our town code for it. The town board, we talked to Tony about it. It was right before the town board decided they were going to do the moratorium, and the town board did not want to have any projects coming into the town. They didn't want the staff to be looking at any more projects because it would give developers the impression that we would be accepting applications at some point in time, which the town board did not want to do. So they indicated to us not to look at any more projects. That was the last one we saw, and we haven't seen anything since.
Question.
Yeah.
I missed who delivered that plan or who presented that plan?
Marathon Engineering was hired by a gentleman by the name of Jake Harrington, who's an agent for Ryan Homes. He was looking at the project.
Can we see that proposal?
We don't have it.
They did not leave it with us.
You could probably contact Marathon, but I'm not so certain they would give it to you just because it's proprietary information to their client. And they didn't leave any with us, and the town board directed us not to take any mapping. So we don't have it.
How firm is the proposal in terms of going through with the Odendock family and their investors in regards to Shadow Lake, and is the recent medical problem of one of the family members going to impact on that?
That's a good question. I did have the opportunity to meet with the partner, actually not meet with him, but talk to him on the phone right after Fritz had his surgery. He felt that they were going to make a decision within that week that I had spoken to him, but it didn't happen evidently. I have not heard from anybody that they've made any decision to move forward. I do know that according to Fritz, they do have the option if Shadow Pine, they're kind of going back and forth, if Shadow Pines becomes a golf course again, they have the opportunity not to purchase the property. I don't know how long that goes on or what the situation is, but he indicated that they can get out of the deal if they want to. So
I think, Karen, I want you to cut off your conversation to say we just kind of wanted to lay out some additional mapping we have for the group. We have some maps to kind of show you. We'll put those on the website. At this scale, they're going to be very hard to see, but kind of want to just give a little background. I know there was questions, comments about getting all the information and having the data and everything else. We've tried to start collecting some of the maps, some of the data that's out there. And Zach's pulling up our first map is talked about our zoning. Many are familiar with zoning. It's on the far wall as well there. Again, we'll put it on the website. We'll put it on the Google Docs, so don't expect that you're going to read it off this page. We know it's small and detailed. But every property in the town of Penfield has a zoning. So there is an underlying zoning, whether it's a golf course, whether it's the town hall, whether it's anything, it has an underlying zoning to it. So although both of these properties have been golf courses for a long period of time, as Jim shared, they are currently zoned R120. So in our world, that's called half-acre zoning. We gave a copy of that in your packet. That's why it's in there. It does explain what is allowed in an R120 district, what can be done as it is currently zoned today. So on the map, it shows what the colors are for that. It's that beigeish, yellowish color that shows up on the screen is what those are zoned. You can see the different colors as it goes throughout the town. But just as we move forward, there is an existing current zoning to that. We currently do not have a recreational zone. We currently do not have a forever wild zone. Those are all things that the group can discuss. Just understand that currently we don't have anything like that on our books. Our lowest level of or density we have is our RR2. So rural residential 2-acre minimum lot is the least dense zoning we currently have on our books. So just to put that out there. Kind of want to quickly run through some other ones. As Jim had talked about, we do have a golf course section in our code. I know we shared the link to the code there. That is also in your packet. You can look at that. And then he talked about historic structures. This shows, and again, it's very hard to see the historic map. It shows the different historic properties. It shows the Clark House, a little up to the upper left. The green property shows the Clark House. It shows the historic neighborhoods that we have, the other historic buildings that are in the town. You will have access to that. I know a big conversation is going to be around the school districts. This shows all the different school districts we have in town. We have Penfield schools, we have Webster schools, Wayne Central to the far east, and Pittsford actually in the southwest. So as we talk about properties, the impact of school districts shows where the Penfield line crosses. Penfield is in the yellow. It also shows all the property that the Penfield School District owns, which is in the green. In a future map, and I'm sure Zach's going to pop up showing our sewer district areas, and I think the conversation is going to be around what the impact of the schools are. If you look at the sewer map, the town is only half built out. Looking 10, 20, 100, 500 years down the road, obviously something's going to happen beyond us. So obviously the school district needs to pay attention to that. They own property further out, so obviously things are going to evolve. Penfield's going to develop. So I think the talk about the impact of the school district, I don't think the Shadow Pines, Shadow Lake, yes, it will have an impact on the schools today, but tomorrow night we have a meeting about mixed use in this room, talking about things on the 250 corridor. We have other areas of development and stuff in town that's going to impact the schools as well. So we'll keep in conversation with them, but I don't think this is the sole project that is going to be the hinge pin of what Penfield needs to do in the future. Obviously, they need to plan for future development of the town and as we move forward, because all that area that shows up on this map is white, is mostly farmland today. Most of that is dependent that we don't have sewers in that area. But if sewers ever do come to that area, at one point in time, the entire town was half-acre zoning throughout. And that was done just because there was not sewers in East Penfield. So there's going to come a day, it wasn't sacred that it had to be 2 acres or 1 acre out in East Penfield. It was done that way because there was not sewer districts out there. It wasn't sanitary sewers. We're having failure of septic systems, so they zoned it higher on the if come. So when sewers come, those properties could be rezoned back to a higher density. So again, just points of discussion, conversation for the group. As we talk about in this property, these properties do have sewer availability to them, but that is something as we get down the road, and if we got that far, we'd talk about capacity of sanitary sewers, capacity of storm sewers, infrastructure, traffic, water. Obviously those are all parts of the conversation. Another thing we're going to provide for you is show all the current town and county-owned properties. In blue is what the county owns, mostly along Ellison Park, along the bay, the bayfront properties. What is in green, highlighted in green, are town park lands today. What is in pink is town-owned properties that may be ponds, things of development. Blue is in the far right corner, is owned by the Monroe County Water Authority, so we're taking what is authority public lands, and then the yellow is what is owned by the county, was the former landfill. So just showing what the town has today for properties we own, need to maintain, take care of. Again, I think that's an important part of the conversation of what we have today. Yes?
About sewers, if houses needed to go into Shadow Pines, or were able to go into Shadow Pines, in order to get sewers in there, is that a matter of just running lines in, or is it a matter of capacity in Monroe County?
Those are all things we'd have to take a look at. The Interceptor main sewer trunk line is down in the Panorama area, so that's the main conduit that takes it to Van Laer in the treatment area.
An issue of both.
So, that's all stuff is if things move forward, you'd get into that, under more of a development scenario. They'd do an environmental impact statement. You'd look at capacity of sewers in the area, what we have, what's nearby, whether they need to, upsize, upgrade, whatever. But
One other question, how do you change zoning or establish a new zone such as recreation?
That is entirely act of the town board. The town board is the only authority in the town that can change the zoning of any.
Require public hearings and that sort of stuff?
Yes.
Speaking of sewers, it only goes on 5 Mile Line Road up to Wayland. It doesn't go beyond that. Our house doesn't have it. And all the other houses on 5 Mile Line Road, with the exception of ours, are owned by Dolomite because they needed a buffer zone between that and the quarry. And so they own them all and they rent them all out. So we're the only owned house on that street from that point forward all the way up to Atlantic Avenue.
Okay.
I have a couple questions related to what Bob was just talking about. So if we're going to make a recommendation as a committee, to what degree do we need to do due diligence on what the cost to the town would be and the impact of the town on development? But I ask that because if we are going to recommend, let's say we recommend that it was going to be houses, or we reject the idea that it's houses, it would be, I think, important to know if sewage is going to be a problem and a big cost to the town. So is that something that we need to get at least some level of detail on, or are we just going to say, I mean, forget about the sewers because we don't think we want houses there?
I mean, obviously, my staff, we can provide you with base numbers on that, but any new development, we would assess, or the cost would be borne by that developer. So if they said we only have enough sewer capacity for 20 houses, then guess what? You got 20 houses, or you need to build, infrastructure to get it to there. So the town typically only goes in. Right now, we're doing a project on the White Village across from Browncroft, where we're bringing sewers to the existing residents in the area. But any new development, the cost of sidewalks, roads, sewers, lights is borne by the developer that's out there. So that would be
including downstream costs if
they need to.
Capacity. But you do bring up a good point, not only whether it's development, but if it's purchasing the land, or if it's, whatever it's going to be. I think you're right. I think we need to justify, or throw something at it to justify that it's reasonable to do, or it's possible to do, or it's impossible to do, whatever that recommendation may be. And it may be more than one. It might be several. It depends on what you come up with. But you're absolutely right. I think you need to justify, the values to it.
Is there any engineering data existing now on the depth of the topsoil there? How far down is the dolomite and shadow pines?
I'd say we haven't
any information on that.
We haven't done any studies on that area in there. Again, that would be something that would be borne by the developer. They would do test pits. Currently, we got the corner of 5 Mile Atlantic.
One of the suggestions early on is that if there is housing, it be restricted to higher end homes, bigger homes.
Now that's something the town cannot dictate.
That's an issue.
The town can't dictate the size, value, color of a home that's...
For a basement, you're not going to get that kind of a home.
I mean, you can establish the size of lots under a zoning district, but the town cannot dictate the size of your house, the square footage that you build.
And I should know the answer to the question in my own town, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Can you talk a little bit about the town's ability for cluster subdivision, and also just talk about, and maybe it's not at this meeting, but the process by which subdivision of land happens here in the town?
Yes. If it's a straight subdivision under current zoning, it'd be handled by the planning board. They would, if it was a cluster development, as Carrie had shared, it would be called Town Law 278.
Yeah, explain what clustering is.
Right.
Yes. Town Law 278, basically you would establish under the current zoning, so it's R120, half-acre zoning. They would show what we call a conventional plan. They have to show a plan that meets all of our standards with no variances, fits the roads, fits the ponds, fits everything in, and they would establish an overall density. No, that gets too much detail. So it's 100 houses, just for round numbers. So they've established they could fit 100 houses on any property, showing the road, showing how they fit everything in. There's no variances required at all. The planning board is tasked with making sure that they believe that that is true. Once they establish the density of it using Town Law 278, they can do what Carrie talked about, was clustering the parcels. So you don't get any more houses. You would still get 100 houses, but you could build them on a quarter-acre lot. You could build them on a smaller footprint with preservation of more buffer areas or more areas around that. So you'd have smaller than half-acre lots potentially, but you would have no more than 100 homes would be the maximum density that you could create. And
It looks like on the map there, you already have delineated the parcels on the...
We've just tried to kind of highlight them so they show up, but that actually falls in that sewer basin. So this one just showed up. This happens to be the sewer basin that...
But if they've delineated the parcels, that means they're approved, and that's how they came up with how many houses they could put on the property, right?
I mean, they came in with a concept sketch. I mean, you're talking here, or you're talking...
Parcels on...
No, but they're...
No, these are just identifying all the parcels.
Map, but you have to blow it up. There's another blow up on that.
Could you blow that up?
This is the parcel and
Before we
zoning
leave
map.
that, Ray, which area are you talking about, referring to?
I'm talking about the area delineated by Clark Road, Wayland, Atlantic Avenue, that front 9 of Shadow Pines.
Okay, so is that where the hand is, Zach?
Right there. Yeah.
And it looks like it's broken up into...
I mean, those are just the pieces as they exist today.
Those parcels, I believe.
Yeah, that's how they
That
look
was going to be my
today.
other question. How many parcels are there comprised of the 2 golf courses?
There actually, I have that number, 1, 2,
The Pines is 4.
4. And
Pines
then
is 4 and the lake is 1.
the lake at one time was approved at 162 acres. It is now at 199 because they've been absorbing lands and re-subdividing them into the
So
property.
Shadow Lake is one continuous parcel?
It
and
is
Shadow
now,
Pines
for
is made
tax
of
reasons.
4?
4, yeah.
Shadow Lake has
Shadow
4.
Pines is 4.
Okay,
And as we said, the Clark House is one that stands on its own.
by itself?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And I think to complete your question, subdivision would be done by the planning board as well. So they would entertain a project if it met the current zoning. If it went under anything other than that, incentive zoning or change of zoning, that falls under the purview of the town board.
Thank you.
You said the lowest level of zoning was RR2?
Correct.
What is that?
That is mostly East Penfield rural residential, so residential and farm
The purple.
All
properties.
this
So
pink, purple to the right.
that is on our zoning code as well. I think we've gave you the link. You can go on to general or E-code 360, which is general code site. You can search what's under that and what's under that. But that would necessitate a change of zone to these properties.
A couple images ago, you showed us the parcels that Penfield owns. Do you have an overlay for the $10 million that you bought the development rights on? Could you show us that?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point, Jim. Several years ago, you may or may not remember, but the town of Penfield did go to a referendum, and the voters decided that they wanted to spend $10 million to save about 1,200 acres of open space, so that went through.
So the ones that are in light blue are the properties that were purchased as we purchased the development rights to them. Some we out and out bought, like Sherwood Fields out on 441 we bought. We bought some other pieces of property that we out and out own. Properties around this building here, the ones in the light blue we own the development rights to. So they are not public property, but the town of Penfield bought the development rights to it. There are some exceptions to what can be developed on that. I know Oak and Apple is a current application that's pending before the planning board right now. Will be heard by the town board. There are some things in that easement that says there can be a winery, there can be some other things in it. So, it, because we own the development rights, it's specific to each individual easement. It doesn't prohibit everything. For the most part, it was trying to limit, preserve agricultural, but you can put up barns, you can do things on those properties as well.
Having the development rights mean you can develop it if the town chooses to.
It really means that the town holds the rights so that others won't be able to develop it, is what it really means.
If it comes further down the road and the town needs money...
No, it's not that easy because we've taken money from the state. And once you do that, you're bound. You're really bound not to do anything with it other than comply with whatever the requirements of that purchase were.
We've gotten some, at least low-interest rates through Clean Water Act, through Stormwater Acts to preserve property from being developed. We were given a lower interest rate to help finance that, and savings to the town was to acquire those lands.
One of the proposals from the committee ends up being the town do something about buying the property or the development rights to the property. That has to go to a referendum.
Yes.
And that process takes a couple of months.
It takes a little more than that because you actually, for the public's sake, you have to prepare a document identifying what the cost is going to be, how much they're going to have to pay back over a period of time. Usually it's 20 years. We're currently right now in our last 6 years of paying off the $10 million. I think we owe $4 million left. But as you start paying those down, as a matter of fact, we've paid down a lot of our debt now, so as a result, you may have seen just yesterday or today that the town's credit rating went back from AA2 to AA1, which is great. But that depends on how you're paying down your debt.
When the town considered that $10 million, was there anything in the financial aspects of that it saved the town money as opposed to having single-family homes built there?
It came on the...
Understanding that single-family homes are expensive in terms of total services.
There was an open space committee that was, charged.
Is that a better deal for the town to keep it as open space than to let it be developed for housing?
It depends on the value of the home, actually. There is a break point where a home above a certain value pays for the number of kids in the school, the services needed.
Now there's some data in the previous comprehensive plan.
Comprehensive plan, I believe, said about 270,000.
But there is a recommendation in the plan to update that number. Has that been updated?
That has not been updated.
That number actually comes from the school district, I believe. They're the ones that generated that information for us
Well, it
over
comes
the
from the
years.
Center for Governmental Research.
Well, it came back from them, though. We meet with them on a regular basis. They provide us with information to that effect.
Can we get a copy of that analysis? Because, I've done financial projections for a living, and it's algebra and assumptions. So you have to know what the assumptions are that go into the financial projection in order to have any confidence in what the answer is.
And the point is, you are right. When you're building housing that's not 275, and actually I think it's a little higher than that now, if I'm not mistaken, but it's tax negative because obviously you're dealing with school. You got to get your kids educated no matter what. And more importantly, from the town's perspective, we now have to go out and we have to plow your road. We have to maintain your road. We have to maintain your sanitary sewer, your storm sewers. We have to make sure that there's adequate recreation for the number of people that are living here. And that means that we have to add more recreation. That is something that we have to look at. When we bought that $10 million worth of land, was it cost effective to do it versus having somebody build, X number of houses that would offset that 10 million? I don't know. The community wanted that land to be preserved. They voted for it, so they were willing to pay the bond for it for a 20-year period to accommodate the land for future generations. So it's just a balance of what the community desires and how they want to deal with it.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I think if this community is going to recommend that the town do something other than allowing it to be developed to houses, I think we need to have some idea of what the financial impact on the town would be of allowing houses. And if it's going to increase the tax rate for people in the Penfield School District, I think that's an important input to this committee's decision making.
Who do we task to do that? Do we ask these guys to get an updated number the best they can?
Well, I think the subcommittee, that's going to be what your charge is, to go out and get the information for each one of the recommendations that you might have. You might have a recommendation for preservation of open space, for keeping a golf course, for looking at what impacts development might have on the property, the types of impacts. Certainly we've been talking about single-family residences where you've got 2.2 children coming to the school district, and the school district's already told us on one project that they're getting to the point where it's getting a little tight for them over by 5 Mile Line and Bay Road, or I'm sorry, Scribner Road. You might want to look, as another group, you might want to look at what kind of impacts does senior housing have, where you're not sending kids to school, you're not generating a lot of traffic on the roads, you're not doing a lot of the things you would do with single-family detached housing. So there's all sorts of things you could be looking at. You just have to decide what some of those things are that you're interested in and not interested in.
Do you have any maps that show any restrictions on the property, for example, wetland buffering?
Yes.
Excuse me, I can't even hear
So
the
we
question.
do.
Pardon me. I can't hear.
Oh,
I can't hear.
he's asking about property restrictions such as environmental sensitivity, like wetlands, steep slopes, that type of thing. We do have mapping that we can show that to you.
And I say the wetland mapping, steep slopes is an EPOD based on steep slopes over 15%, so that's what's showing in orange. The wetlands and the floodplains, floodplains are generated based on an elevation. The wetlands are basically an indication that there may be wetlands there. If any development was to happen, it would need to be delineated at the time. So we just use the layers as basically, okay, there may be something there, that's something we need to take a look at, but it is by no means a definitive. Here I think it's highlighting, obviously the quarry, and it's highlighting the couple of ponds that are on Shadow Pines, Shadow Lakes Pond, and then the drainage way in between it. So we're not showing specific wetlands, but those are things you still look at as you get into development and whether you get
access to this?
We can provide you any mapping.
Would you repeat that, Dan? We're having a hard time carrying down.
Do we have access to that mapping?
This currently is an in-house application on staff. We're working on the public side of it, but we can provide any maps that you want and push it to the website. Many of these maps are already on the town website as basically canned maps ahead of time, showing soil conditions, showing steep slope areas. Those are under the map section on our website, but if there's anything specific you want to see or you'd like to see, we can provide it to you.
So before we go to Carrie, I want to circle back to Jim's question about who would do the work on that. And my understanding is that it's not a fully developed plan, but it's deep enough to identify what the key issues are. And the town staff, who already has a full-time job, are not signing up for a paper chase, but they are signing up for a resource to provide information from a planning level of detail. Okay, it is not about the same kind of analysis and proposal that you would go to the planning board, but from a planning level of detail about what are the key issues, Sam, about what are the things that might cost the town more money? What's the order of magnitude that could be created by the additional services? And then the town staff, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the town staff is a truthing loop to say, yes, that's in the right order of magnitude for the issues that will be created or solved.
So who creates, so I say I think it's going to cost $2 million in increased school taxes, and they're going to tell me if I'm on the ballpark.
No, we're not going to tell you that because we don't have the expertise to do that.
So,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the school district has the expertise to tell you that either, because there's so many variables and so many factors involved in what takes place. A lot of it's going to depend on how, if development ever occurred, how much of it would occur, what type of it would occur. You may not have any impact on the school district if senior housing is built instead of, people with 2 or 3 children. It depends on what you're thinking about in terms of development on that site. You're the ones that are going to have to make those kinds of recommendations. We will do anything we can as a staff to help you with any resources that you might need to make your decisions. And if you come to us and say, we need this, this, or this, we'll do everything we can to get it for you. There may be times that we can't, depending on our ability to get access to them as well. But certainly if we can get them for you, we will.
Well, I have a proposal to offer to the committee. We're trying to make decisions about alternative futures here. The only future that is actually already proposed is 255 houses. Now, it wasn't accepted by the town,
right,
but it's the only proposal that is out there. And if we, as a committee, decide to do nothing and let the market run, then it's the most likely outcome, I would think, because it's the only proposal that has seen the light of day. And I would propose that we use that as a baseline to compare our other proposals against. If we do nothing, we're probably going to end up with 255 houses. So what does that mean for the school district? What does that mean for the town? What does that mean for the people in the community? And then we can evaluate alternatives. What if we buy it as a park? What if we do senior homes? What are the other options that we can compare against each other?
I think you just bought yourself a subcommittee.
Yes.
and the other part of, and you're right, and the other part of that too is, would the community support another bond act to purchase that land? I mean, they may not.
And I wasn't saying that jokingly. I think that's very important.
Okay, so we're going to go to Carrie and then Bob, and then because of the time, I want to do a process check as to what you want to process and what kind of time pressure you have here, so we know how to use it. So Carrie?
How about Jack?
I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't.
I'll be after them, but
Okay.
they've been doing all the talking.
John, why don't we go to you first, Jack?
Let's go to you first.
Then we'll go Jack, Carrie, and then Bob.
Fine, okay. My question would be, if there is a pushback on whatever we come up with, how would there ever be an evaluation should it become a legal quagmire like we see in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, we don't want that.
Am I crazy thinking that? Or?
No, I'm trying to think of the
how we get there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how we get to that situation.
Nobody will buy it with the rules that we have. Oldcastle isn't just going to sit there and let it be a company.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's always the opportunity that say for instance, well, there's several things could happen. Say for instance, the property is valued at $4 million. And the town, you make a recommendation that the town should purchase the land for open space. I don't know if somebody's willing to come in and buy a golf course at this point in time. If they would, that'd be great. But if they don't, say the town, your recommendation is the town should go out and bond $4 million to buy the land. And the town agrees with you. if the town goes out and gets the land and the people in the town vote for that bond act, it kind of solves itself because now you've got the property. You have to maintain the property after you get it, so it's going to be more than $4 million because we've got to somehow do something to that land to make sure it's safe and functional for the public to use in some public setting. If you decide that you don't want to have single-family housing, which is what is zoned right now, and the value is $4 million, and somehow that value is taken away from Dolomite to sell that land, you can certainly bet that they will be sending a lawyer to our door to talk to us about loss of value of property.
But we've never even touched on that.
No,
Well,
you've got time to do it.
No, we haven't, but the committee, as a passion rises in the committee around different alternatives, then we're expecting that those ideas will surface in the deliberations in the future
Well, no,
committees.
I would agree with him 100% of options, but my idea is you're going to have to break that property down. You're not going to be able to sell as one thing to anybody for whatever they want to use it. So that's where I would
Okay,
think the
well,
good idea's got to come.
Okay, so that's a different, I'm going to share with you 5 scenarios that we, in just preliminary thought about, but that would be a 6. That was not on the list that I got on the flip chart there. So I want to just bring people up to a higher level because you're doing good work in drilling down on how to fix this. But the committee is to come up with a recommendation or several recommendations that they think is wise for the future of the town of Penfield. They will then submit it to the town, and the town will deliberate on whether it's implementable and feasible going forward. Then they will make the decision, I'm assuming, and I'm just a dumb facilitator here, they'll make the decision based on with legal counsel as to what will happen when they communicate what the intentions of the vision is for the town of Penfield. And then that is in part why when we look at the short time frame, Neil, that all has to happen before the moratorium expires a year from when it was put in place. And so it really isn't, it's up to you to decide what the recommendation needs to be, and you can say, what would be very best for the town is this, but in my heart, I don't think it's implementable. Or I'd be willing to settle for this because I understand the realities of the situation. Or I don't want to do anything because it'll all play out in the courts anyways. And so you have to make a decision on your subcommittee and the commission, and the subcommittees and the committee as to what you think is wise to make a recommendation. That recommendation then will be considered by the board. They have the responsibility to make the decision, I'm assuming with legal counsel, as to where they go forward. And of course, the property owners have their own expectations and rights under the law to do whatever they intend to do. So we have to keep it in perspective. Your job is to do your best job on the recommendations, and there will be people here who are very idealistic. There are people who are more focused on compromise, and some who say fatalistically, well, there's nothing we can do anyways. If we take the apocalyptic approach, Sam, that it's going to happen anyways if we don't do anything. Okay, so it'll all come together as based on what you think. You're a select committee, 20 out of 80 people who wanted to be on the committee, to put your best ideas forward. So Carrie, Bob,
You're fine,
Craig.
actually.
Yeah.
So one question and one suggestion. Question would be, is it possible for town staff to provide in the Google Drive zoomed in mapping of these different categories that you've shown us that do a parcel boundary showing the properties in question, so people are very clear on, because looking at mapping, it can be hard to get oriented sometimes, so we know exactly what parcels we're looking at and have each map based on EPODs and all the different mapping, zoning, all that kind of good stuff zoomed in so there's no confusion about what we're looking at in the drive.
Yes.
The suggestion I have is, as we're figuring out what scenarios or alternatives we might be exploring as a group or in subcommittee, we might want to collectively come to some consensus about the categories by which we might be judging or rating these alternatives. And I'm thinking about a matrix. So when you're making a decision that you look at environmental, fiscal, impact to the schools, recreation, legal potential for lawsuit. And that's a fundamental reality. I'm going to tell you as a public servant in another town, when you've got a complex project or a potentially controversial project, you're going to get sued by somebody. Somebody will sue you. So part of it is to make sure that you're outlining a process by which, at the very least, the town is being responsible to the residents and to the taxpayers about navigating the process so that the process is sound, even if the outcome or the people are not happy one way or the other. So we've got to be mindful of that. But I think if we could come to some agreement about what categories of, as we're trying to judge the different scenarios that we might be exploring, how are we going to rate them and across what categories? Because I think there's a myriad of infrastructure impacts, fiscal impacts, short-term and long-term, because people always think about the minute you make a decision or the minute you pay for something, the minute you buy your house, you don't think about the water heater going or the air conditioning going or the long-term cost, or when you buy the car, the minute your warranty ends, and that's when the transmission blows. Those are the kind of things that we have to be thinking about with whatever decision we make, that we also understand the long-term impact, financially and physically.
Good input, Karen. Okay, over to Bob.
Continuing on the Jack's legal aspect, if we as the committee recommend that the zoning be changed to something other than the R120, that potentially decreases the value of the property to Oldcastle, and the town may be sued. We as members of the committee, what's our liability?
That's a great question.
I think I know the answer. I think Tony addressed it in one of the town meetings.
I sent an email to Andy Moore.
Oh, you sent, okay.
Yes.
But I think we all should have...
He told me in an email, which I can share with this group, that we're acting on a committee for the town, so we are covered for our actions as part of the committee under the town's liability coverage.
That's right.
If we go and make statements on our own that cause a problem, libel, that kind of thing, if we act on our own, we're on our own. But any action that we take place as part of this committee, he told me we're covered by the town.
That is exactly right.
So I can pass that on, the email from Andy Moore, to this group.
This committee's only making recommendations anyway. It's the town board that takes the liability with whatever decision they make.
That's right.
I agree that's the way it should be, but I'm happy to know that I'm covered.
But that shouldn't be a reason why you wouldn't make a recommendation.
No.
I mean, you should make the recommendation, as Ron says, you should make the recommendation that you think is appropriate and is a benefit to the community.
Okay, so I want to get over here to Craig.
I had one other part.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's a question or a suggestion. If the committee gets us to a point where we're pretty strong that we don't want the housing, we don't want R120, we want something else, it becomes pretty clear to us that that's going to be the recommendation. As soon as that happens, why shouldn't we invite Oldcastle in to sit down with us and hear that, and maybe we can start a conversation on a better solution and avoid a legal agreement.
Are you limiting yourself to one recommendation, or are you looking for multiple recommendations?
No, in any of the communications I've had with the town, it's recommendation or recommendations. That was the goal of this committee.
I think we have more leverage than we're giving ourselves credit for, because if you go back in time, the Odenbachs had a responsibility and had a buffer zone. That's why they put the golf courses in, to buffer against the quarry. And then when Oldcastle buys the property, don't they maintain the same obligation to maintain buffers?
Oh, that's
I'm not so certain they did it to maintain buffers. They did it to make money. I mean, it was an opportunity for them. Well, Shadow Lake was an opportunity for them to take away a liability issue that they've been dealing with for a long, long time, with the kids going out there and getting hurt and everything else. It gave them an opportunity to work with the town on a project that was going to be productive for them and the town. It was an easy approval because everybody loved the idea of having it. And I think in their minds, they were young and they liked playing golf and they liked playing platform tennis and everything else. It was an opportunity for them to go to their own playground and do what they wanted. So there was a lot of things going on there. It wasn't just the idea of a buffer. Dolomite over the years, up until very, very recently, had not sold any lands around that quarry just because they wanted to keep a buffer.
And they've established a good precedent.
They did, until Terrace Hill went in and they started selling land off around that area. But generally speaking, I think the idea was, hey, let's do another golf course. It's popular, people like it, we'll make money, and it's not costing us very much to do it other than to maintain the property. We're not having to do a lot of infrastructure stuff. We're building roads and all that stuff you have to take care of, like at Allen's Creek Valley and Shadow Pines Drive and all that. So there were a lot of reasons why they did what they did. It wasn't just simply to create a buffer. I think that it kind of worked out that way, and it was good for the town and the residents around it.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
Newcastle doesn't. I want to go to Craig here, and then I want to do a process check because we're at 7:54.
Probably a question for Mark. Given that one of the potential solutions for the problem might be a change in zoning and the impact on the community to have a couple hundred new houses on the west side of the quarry is roughly equal to the impact of putting a couple hundred houses on the east side of the quarry, why did the moratorium choose to approach just public golf courses as opposed to the potential impact that Penfield Country Club might have in exactly the same scenario, given the decline in the golfing industry in general and the decline in, well, I mean, I know the certificate memberships at PCC are down significantly, as is the initiation fee, and they're living in the same environment and it would impact the community the same. Why aren't we looking at PCC on all this stuff?
That's a good question for the town board. The town board put in place the moratorium. They put forth what the parameters were and the parcels that were included in that. So I don't have a immediate answer why that wasn't looked at. Penfield does have 3 golf courses in the town.
And then say, whoops, we forgot a course.
That's a good question back to the town board, is whether, I mean, that's not, the moratorium wasn't put in place for that, so that's not under the, that's just to the...
I just wanted to see, because I think some of the zoning changes for the Penfield Country Club, too.
I mean, Penfield Country Club is zone RA1, so it is a little bit different zoning than some of the other areas. So
It's zone 1 acre, so each lot on that property
the
would have
potential
to
for
have
that
a
is
1 acre parcel per lot.
development is a little less than the half acre, but I think as Ron's got that down on the parking lot list for further exploration.
Okay, it's 7:56. We said we were going to stop at 8, but we can go as long as you want, and we can process whatever you think is profitable for the group to process. Tom, getting back to you, you were asking about the public information meeting, the call-in for the...
No, for the June 6th meeting.
The June 6th meeting, okay. So it was understood downstairs in the dark room that it was just for that, but I believe it probably fixed for both. That phone call-in is yes and web stream is yes. Okay. So web stream meaning that the feed would come off these cameras, and so you could participate. It would be very difficult in a group of this size to have you be able to contribute, okay, but you could monitor and see it in real time. Okay. Okay, so the issue is, where do you want to go from here? Because we haven't talked about any scenarios, and we haven't talked about next actions before the next meeting. Is anybody, tell me about time pressure. Can you go another 15 minutes, or are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. We should vote. Those that don't want to stay don't have to. Okay, I think we're going to go another 15 minutes, Ray, and I'm not, that's not, if we don't need 15 minutes, we don't need to. There's a couple things that I think we should talk about. I think we should begin to talk about what are the realm of scenarios that could be here, and this is not a definitive list, this is just a list to try to save time for the committee. And the idea that I heard over here from Jack, I believe, was there was another idea is to have a parcel support several different things. But basically,
The hell no, no change, buy both, preserve both as golf and recreation. The idea would be to, another scenario would be to split them without, I guess without prejudice as to which one, but one to remain a golf course and one to be residential. There could be a zoning change to create lower impact development, and you didn't use those terms, Mark, but when you were talking about the cluster development in response to Kerry, I was imagining that's what this was.
Falls into the next one. The zoning is maintained. So cluster development, if it remained R120,
Okay.
would the group propose to do more of a cluster development, retain buffer areas, have a denser one area and, preserve some of the other areas, so, potentially.
That would have more of a look and feel than open space because the development was clustered.
Yeah,
correct?
Yes, the third one is, I think was the other comment is, could it be downgraded to another zoning district, whether RR1, RA2, something that's less dense.
Okay, and the final one, don't do anything. Alternative in every scenario, there's do nothing, let the law and the market forces play out. Now, that's just a starting. I'm not bought into any of this. I just want to save some time here because we're going to have to get to a point where people say, I'm passionate about checking this out or that out, and then people will say, well, that's like this, and I'd like to do both of them, and so I got to kind of find out where the will of the committee is here. Are there other alternatives, and you're only an hour into it, an hour and a half into it, so I understand that. Are there other alternatives that you think should be up here? Jim Froome.
If you do your research on the New York State master plans and whatever else they want to call them, we had our first one in 1966. And the quarry was identified as a problem in that, okay? When Shadow Lake was built, which was there was the leadership of this county was somebody that was looking at open space. And we don't have meetings of the minute, but we have a few recollections of people that were on that. Okay, that was a very, yes, what Jim said is, we kind of fell into this with the golf course. I mean, they wanted to build houses, they wanted to do this, they wanted to do that. We fell into it, but then over time, if you look at New York State laws, we have 50 years of history on this, okay? I would say number two, rezone it to what the master plan says. In 2010, it says recreational open space, okay? And a little tidbit for everybody. Jim said, I think you meant, or what you said, it was never meant to be a buffer, okay? But it turned out to be a buffer. Since 1986, in every application for mining, the Dolomite Company calls it a buffer space. They call it open space. They say they have no plans to develop it. They say they have no plans to cause the town to have more infrastructure. They also have a map or a drawing, an engineering drawing in there showing, as Jim said, the Clark House could have office and things in there. They have a 3-story building there with a walkway over to the quarry when it becomes a lake. And that was at a time when they anticipated, and the mining, I believe in the mining application, they anticipated 30 years in 84, which would have been 2014, which was probably the second or third time it showed up in the application, okay? So I would like to see, we have a committee that looks into, because sure enough, we'll probably get sued over it, but according to the state, New York State law.
So what is the scenario you want to have looked into?
Rezoning it.
You're talking about create a new zoning district.
A new zoning district for recreational, which is a mammoth job because it includes water, it doesn't just include golf courses or skateboard parks.
Okay, so is that part of this or is it a separate scenario?
Well, when I see, when you had development up there, I'm thinking housing. Maybe I'm reading that wrong.
Well, I think that's.
He's looking for a new zoning district. separate
I'm looking
from
for a new
any
zoning
kind of
district.
Recreation zone.
Where no development could take place.
Okay.
Mike, I'm not trying to speak for you.
No, that's absolutely correct. Because according to New York State law, the table is set to do that in Penfield. We want awards for open
Who's gonna own
space.
that then?
Pardon?
Who's gonna own it?
Who's gonna own what?
That property
They're gonna
you're
have to sell
talking
it for
about?
less money because they won't get the money that they're
Whoever buys it.
Yeah.
Whoever develops it within the zone.
That's okay. Okay, so we're gonna be here
Somebody's
really,
gotta buy it.
we're gonna be here really late if we start going through assessing all these alternatives, because that's the work of the subcommittee. These are all important questions, and this committee, we're gonna have to sort through them and have what I call high-gain conversations around them. Sam?
One other option is buy one, let Shadow Lake run as a golf course, and do whatever we propose with Shadow Pines.
Okay.
When you say we propose, you mean like somebody under them?
The committee. So
Okay, so if I change this to /other, that reflects this one, right?
Sure.
Okay, it's not just
Yeah, because that
residential, it's
presupposes that Shadow Lake is a golf course and we put residential on, or we allow residential on.
Well, I think what I heard you saying is the important piece is that it isn't, the one is just residential. It could be golf and other. Do I understand you?
So we're looking at both golf courses.
Yes.
But right now, one golf course, they're planning to continue run as a golf course. So I understand we want to be circumspect and talk about Shadow Lake as well. But the one that we actually have to come up with a proposal right now about is Shadow Pines.
Well, if the
And so
commi-
when you say split and one is golf course and one residential, to me that means, okay, Shadow Lake that they want to run as a golf course is going to be a golf course, and then we let Shadow Pines be residential.
Not necessarily.
Well, Sam, what I want to point out here is this, where we're at is up at the 50,000 foot level, okay? Going down to the next flight level below, it could be the assumption, and it, because of what's transpired, is that is Shadow Pines would be other. Shadow Lake.
My point is, split by one is an option that's not up there. You have buy both. We don't have to buy Shadow Lake. They want to run as a golf course anyway.
Yes.
Right, but the thing is, they want to keep Shadow Lake as a golf course and sell Shadow Pines as for development.
Right.
What if we propose the reverse? I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Everybody I've dealt with, I've called several golfing companies from around the country and including Canada to see if there'd be interest in them buying Shadow Pines. The company that marketed this property for Old Castle out of Tampa Bay sent out all of the perspectives for the golf course to all these different companies. And every time I call them, I keep getting, well, we've got the perspective, it doesn't work for us with Shadow Pines. I think that if Fritz did not buy Shadow Lake, I think somebody else would buy Shadow Lake because it still makes money. And it's not just golf, it's got the venue for weddings, banquets, all sorts of other things. So it's still a very viable business. So if Fritz didn't buy it, somebody would probably come in and buy it if he didn't. Maybe not for as much, maybe for more, I don't know. But I just can't get anybody to tell me that they're going to come in and buy Shadow Pines for the sake of developing this.
Okay, so far, it seems like it's a split future. We're agreeing on that. You're just saying, well, we don't necessarily have to buy another one, but it could be a split future.
Right, but you only have buy both as an option. Buy one is an option.
Okay.
You didn't mean to buy both, though, did you?
Oh, I was just taking the unconstrained alternative.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's suggesting buy both.
That's what it says.
It's an option.
Well, it's just an option, and quite frankly, when we started this conversation earlier in the spring, I was not aware that there had been a sale for the lakes, okay?
It's a pending.
Yeah, we were going on what information I had, so I want to go over.
Agreement, it's not even a pending sale.
Say we.
Who is we?
Who is we that made these assumptions? Because some of those assumptions didn't come in the last 2 hours from this group.
We is Tony and the town staff. When we went through, I said, so where are we, what are the possible scenarios?
Okay.
I was the one who drove the idea because I know how fast 120 minutes goes. And so this was just give you something to throw fruit at.
Yeah, we just put up a straw man.
Yeah, so it's,
Here's some potential ideas, change them, mark them up.
you want to add, I'm cool with it.
It was just a straw man to
These
start
should be your
conversation.
scenarios, just like with the ground rules, I'm trying to expedite the process. So we're going over here to Mike. Mike's been patient.
I think I agree with everything that you guys are saying. I don't want to lose sight on Shadow Lake and whatever that's zoned, because it's great that it's bought or potentially is going to be purchased. But I think we make a mistake as a group if we don't try to look at what that would be zoned as a property, because we'll be, at some point, it won't be profitable, maybe, hopefully not, but I hope it runs like that forever. But we're making the same mistake that whoever did years and years ago. So that has to be something that we keep in mind.
If I could just add something to that. Can you guys get us some information as to if it would significantly affect the Odenbachs and their group on buying Shadow Lake if Shadow Lake were rezoned?
If Shadow Lake were rezoned?
Yeah, sure. Exactly what he said. Right now, we're making a big assumption. We're assuming that the Odenbachs and their group are going to make a successful buy of Shadow Lake. We hope that's going to be the case. It hasn't occurred yet. But even if it does, 5 years from now, they may decide Shadow Lake isn't worth it, and they want to sell it for residential.
There's some things you have to take into consideration, particularly with Shadow Lake, and you'll see it in your packet. There was a rezoning that was done of 16 acres at Shadow Lake. I can't tell you the date off the top of my head now. I should know it, but I don't. But they had the approval for 50 townhouse units to be built on that site.
Right, I know.
They have 39 built now. They still have the right, I mean, the association and whoever the developer is, have the right to continue to build that. And that might be a reason why you'd let it happen, because it might cover the cost of keeping this thing going another 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. I'm not sure you'd want to rezone it other than maybe everything around the townhouse, leave the townhouse area as it is, and let them build that out if they want to. You may want to rezone it to something else. I'm not so certain if the intent is to have it as a golf course for a long-term period, if that's what the Odenbachs want to do. I'm not so certain that rezoning it would or hurt them or not hurt them based on the use. If their intent is to keep it as a golf course.
Wouldn't that be an important thing to find out?
Yeah, my personal feeling is if somebody told me that my property is valued higher at half-acre lots than it is at 1 acre lots, I'm going to want to keep it at half-acre lots. I'm still shocked that the farmers in Penfield allowed the town back in 1979 to rezone those properties to half-acre lots. I assume they thought that it was always going to go back to half-acre after sewers came in. Unfortunately, many of them passed away during that period of time. They've never seen that value come back to their properties again. So
Okay, so I want to get us back on track here. And I'm going to go to Mike in a minute, but I want to tell you, Sam, I finally got it. It isn't about buying it. It's about preserving both as golf or recreation. The first one.
Right.
Buying it is irrelevant. That's an implementation step, which would be in the recommendation. Mike?
I guess just to piggyback on the last thing that I threw out, I mean, the Odenbachs made a play for Shadow Pines and did not get that, and it was to develop it. So,
that's right.
So I think we just need to be careful.
Yeah.
Their intention, long-term,
exactly right.
I don't know any of them, but, you know, their intention in general could change very easily down the road. So
I can tell you that there is concern on the part of the buyers of Shadow Lake that the value of the property would decline if it was zoned.
Yeah.
If there were restrictions on the zoning, even though their intent is to operate it profitably as a golf and restaurant facility. They also perceive a dramatic loss in value if Shadow Pines is developed, returns to a golf course at a loss, you know, because there are significant losses associated with operating that as a golf course. If that was in some way subsidized or run at a loss, it would, you know, dramatically impact the value of Shadow Lake to the potential buyers.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Carrie, but I want to encourage the committee, this is meeting one, and I want to encourage you not to run ahead of yourself, okay? The charge of the committee is to come up with recommendations that you believe are wise for the town. And you're going to have a period of 6 weeks to kind of sort through that and noodle through it and sleep on it. The issue of what are the ramifications of the recommendation and what is the strategy or the gaming of what happens in this chess game going forward is something you may want to get into or not. I don't think you're going to have leverage to get into that. It's interesting stuff, but you have to decide how much life energy you want to put in there. But the first piece really is to get clarity on the recommendations, to break them down as to what the impacts are that you see for the town, and then to do your best job coming to consensus as to what you think is wise for the town of Penfield. Yes, Don.
I think that we still haven't put Jack's original idea up there, and I think looking at the parcels as subdividable.
Okay.
Looking at them as different pieces. So not necessarily looking at it as you have to have the whole golf course be one thing.
Okay,
so subdivide by parcel.
So would we be talking about subdividing both or subdividing one?
Anything. So just looking at that as an option.
Okay.
Well, Kerry asked that question, and Shadow Pines is 4 already, and Shadow Lake is 1, correct?
That was my understanding.
Right, but
yeah, but I'm not sure it's just about.
It's not about the existing.
I'm checking this out. It's not about disaggregating the holding. It's about. I thought I understood, Jack. It was about creating separate uses on one parcel.
Correct.
Separate, allowing that. Okay. Is that? Do I hear that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So. Because there's no eraser on this puppy, we got one shot to put it down. So what would this alternative that did that? Would it be, what are 5 words or less that would describe that?
Consider multiple options of the property.
Okay.
Zoning.
Mixed use.
Different zoning classifications.
Consider different uses on the same property?
Right.
Mixed use.
You know, I just think to spell it out, it's like, so maybe the 100 feet, or maybe it's 200 feet, I don't know. You know, the neighbors to Shadow Pines probably want a lot of things, or different people want a lot of things, but, you know, okay, I don't want to be looking right out of my front window seeing a bunch of houses there. So, you know, maybe it's like, oh, this is the Forever Wild strip.
Okay.
But, you know, maybe they'd prefer keep it the way it is, but it isn't the way it was. It's not operating. It's not a golf course anymore. So I think that's what we're talking about is little, you know, this is the most critical area to make me happy as a neighbor. Are there some areas that should be zoned something else for the kind of the general public?
Okay.
I don't think we know that yet, but it's something like that.
Sam?
So I'm still not clear on this. So when we talk about different uses on a property, are we talking about there are 4 parcels for Shadow Pines and each of those 4 parcels could be different? Yes. Or are we talking about on one of the 4 parcels of Shadow Pines, we're going to allow multiple different uses? Because it's not clear to me on how you do that in zoning.
I don't think the four parcels are just, you got a tax account numbers. That's basically what we got. They've got nothing to do with what I was talking about. I think it's like, how would you lop up the property to deal with some of the concerns of the neighbors, of, you know, the greater public, whatever that is.
So we can do that?
No,
I guess you could propose it. You cannot.
We cannot.
You think so? No, you cannot. You can recommend that there be zoning changes for multiple uses on one or both facilities.
But there has to be one zone per lot, right?
Under our 120 zoning district, there's multiple uses on it. It could be a church, it can be, you know, library, municipal buildings. And just because it's showing one parcel, you can have multiple uses on that. They would come before the planning board as a subdivision application. Half of this is a school, the other half is houses, this half is...
And we got lots of paper.
As long as things
cemeteries
fall within that zoning district, and that's why we provided you what an R120 district is, and then it shows what's permitted, what's conditionally permitted, so it's not a single sole use per property. Yes, you can have multiple uses on a property.
So it's 8:17, and I asked for 15 more minutes, and we're 2 minutes over. Are there any more, and this is, you know, this is a work in process, so if you, between now and the next meeting, you think of an alternative that you're really passionate about or should be checked out, we can add that. This is a work in process. Yes, so I want to go to Ann in the interest of time. Carrie, we'll come to you quickly, but we've got to figure out what next
I'll
actions
just
are.
be very quick. There
Okay,
was discussion, I don't golf, I've never been on the site, so there was talk that we might do a site visit or something like that. It seems to me that would be important to do early on. And is that a possibility?
Is it possible to do a site visit?
We'd have to get permission from the property owner, his private property.
Posted no trespassing right now.
I saw somebody playing golf there.
And you're talking about the Pines? I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Okay, Carrie?
Right now, we have two categories of uses that are in some combination, recreation, open space, or some type of residential. Are there any other kind of uses that the town should be thinking about that might make sense at that location? And I'm asking that question open-ended. Are there any other types of uses besides either some type of residential or some kind of open space or recreation? Any other categories that the town should...
What if you wanted a cemetery, Pine Woods?
That's allowed as a
running out of
residential.
space. Is that allowed in R120? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I asked like a solar, and a lot of places they're putting solar arrays out for solar farms. Is that something that the town of Penfield wants to be thinking about?
We're having two solar locations now, so doesn't mean we can have a third one.
Okay, let's stay up high, okay?
I'm just saying other uses.
Yeah.
We've got residential, it's either going to be residential and open space only, golf and open space, or golf and residential. Are there any other pieces that we should be putting in there as a thought? And I'm just, we're thinking long-term.
Nursing homes, assisted living facilities.
And those sort of fall, I think, in the category of type of residential, so that's getting down to the...
Right next door, at the right time, right?
Covered it with that zoning change with lower impact development. It could be one of anything, actually.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification.
Yes, Doc.
Are you going to put this on Google Docs so we can play with it, or?
I don't know what play with it means.
Are you saying just to review the notes and the comments?
Right, we can refine it, and back to you to...
No, it'll be on Google Docs, but the work of the committee is the work of the committee. And once we find out where the passion is, then I'm assuming you'll have groups that are like-minded that will work together, and you'll come back the next meeting with...
We're saying the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, unless somebody has a lot of passion for multiple ones, that people would sign up for one of these. And I'm wondering, is that possible tonight?
Signing subcommittees?
Yes.
Makes sense to do that.
Well, I'd rather see it on Google Doc for a little bit then.
Okay. Sam?
I think we have to think about how we do committees. Does it make more sense to do committees on each of these alternatives, or does it make more sense to have a committee that's going to look at the financial impact of things, one committee that's going to look at the environmental impact? Because if we're going to do this by type of proposal, then that means we're going to have 5 committees looking at the financial impact of what. So I think we need more time to think about this. I certainly am not ready to volunteer for any of those.
Can you segregate that? That'd be like fracking. We've got the financial of fracking and the environmental of fracking, but they go together.
Well, I say that partly because, as I said before, part of my career has been in financial projections. I'm very interested in understanding the financial impact on the school district and the town. And if that means I participate on multiple committees, I guess that means I go to a whole lot of meetings. But that's what I would like to do.
Okay.
All of these scenarios boil down to money.
Yes.
Nothing's going to happen between now and then?
No, that's the point of this discussion
Right.
of next actions. If you go to the agenda, the idea of what do you want to get done between now and then, what actions can you take between now and then to make some progress. Everybody now has contact information for everybody on the committee, so you can connect. We're going to have a website where we publish information. I'm assuming, based on the plan, there was supposed to be an email go out tomorrow with links, hot links to your email account, so you can click on them and go to the right place for documents. That's what was planned in our preparation. So I hear there's a few things on the bin list that have to be checked out, but the question is, what do you want to get done between now and the next committee? Or do you want to let this soak in about what this means, where you want to participate? And Sam raises a very important question. How will you work? Will you work in scenarios, or will you get back to something more like what Carrie said, and that is matrices, where you have a financial line that goes across the different scenarios? And the person who is engaged in the environmental assessment looks across the 7 scenarios. The person who's involved in the financial piece would go across those scenarios. That's really a committee decision. And probably you need to think about that going forward. Are there other things, Bob, that you would like to have done between now and the next meeting?
Well, I think we ought to start coming up with proposals on what we want to see the land use to be, and I don't know how we get there. We got to throw something out there. We want this, we want that, and then do the financial impact, the environmental impact, the traffic impact, the school on each of those.
Yes.
It probably shows up as a matrix.
At the planning level, the challenge is that people have said they're not ready to make a commitment as to how the committee's going to
Yeah, I was hoping we had another meeting next week at this time and take the next step.
I think with the way, I mean, I know that the contracts and everything are progressing on the Dolomite side of the slate. I think waiting 3 weeks to have the next meeting is probably a mistake if we want to pursue alternatives. The clock is ticking.
I think we're just getting started here. I think we ought to come back next week and start working.
Okay. So there's a motion to come back sooner than later, to move meeting 2 up to...
I think we can make a lot of progress electronically.
Okay.
And I think we're missing a bet if we don't set that up so that it works for all of us easily. Town staff has offered to kind of be a gateway for us, and I think we can contribute our ideas into the cauldron, if you will, and get a lot done that way.
Would the committee like to walk the site? Is there value to that, to walk the site?
I think for some people it might be helpful, for other people it's just another walk that we've all done 100 times.
The places also.
So I think it should be offered, I agree, but I'm not sure we should do that for a meeting or part of a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. I have photos, I can do another area, but I mean,
We
I don't
can
have
send you
your
aerial,
else,
so
I
you
can
can
show some, but I'll do that.
That'll be part of your package.
If you want to walk it, it's the back 9 to be walked,
Yeah.
not the front.
Okay, so yes.
I want to go back to your question
Yeah.
in regard to schedule.
Yes.
And certainly school district appreciates being here tonight, and 3 of the next 4 meetings are on school board nights where we have meetings that were scheduled last July.
Yep.
So
Doesn't have to be at 2.
again, we don't expect anyone to work it around us, but I certainly would, be active to working on a subcommittee, or if you're going to have other meetings, we'd be willing to participate. There's 2 of us, but unfortunately we're locked by where we have to be.
Well,
Just so we all understand, the financial impact is the school.
Well, not necessarily.
But it's 70% of our taxes go to the school.
It's 60% of your taxes, but anything we do, I think you have to have a perspective. We have 50 acres out on Gloria Drive that we've had since 1960. That's our future for what we're doing. So there is a financial impact. If 200 houses are built, there may be a need for a school. If no houses are built, there is no need for a school. But down the road, if there are houses built, our focus is on Gloria Drive, which the town isn't ready to do anything with, but that's our focus. But also keep in mind that anytime we build anything, 73% of that is funded by New York State. So the financial impact comes down to what the voters will vote on and bond for that other remaining percentage of anything we do.
My point was just that we should take a look at the dates. It was important to give 2 slots on this committee to the school board. We should think about the dates so that we can have representation there.
okay, so Tuesdays are just bad for the school board?
Well, we have our schedule out, and I can just tell you, these dates are, and we set our schedule already for next year, but Tuesdays generally are very bad. It's two
So
Tuesdays a
the
month.
next one on the 23rd is bad.
Yes, 24th.
24th.
Make it the 23rd.
Thursday, the 23rd of June is graduation, which I have to give out diplomas, so I enjoy that. Tuesday, July 12th is our board and organizational meeting where we elect our officers. So, but we only meet once in August, so there's opportunity there, and we probably only meet once in July.
Or Wednesdays, or
Wednesdays are not good for
Town board is in this room every week.
Mondays are generally good. Thursdays are generally not good either. Wednesdays, Thursdays are not good.
Okay, so would you rather do Monday, the 23rd?
That's fine.
Okay, now, I don't know, we sat to look at these, all I know is my calendar, I don't know the town's calendar, and I know there was lots of meetings that are going on here that we were working on.
But that doesn't really move.
We don't have to meet here, we're meeting at Dolomite.
Okay.
One day.
No, that doesn't. The bottom line is that I am not available the week of the 16th, I'll be out of town. But it could be next Tuesday, if you wanted it next Tuesday. But I don't know what the town schedule is.
We can check for you and get back to you all real quickly tomorrow.
Okay. And so next Tuesday for the school district, does that work or not?
Oh, yes.
That would work.
Right.
Yes. Dan?
I think we need time to digest this stuff and have a chance to really think about what each one of these means to us. And be prepared to come to our next meeting to discuss in more detail what these mean as a group. And then work our way into whatever smaller groups may develop. But I agree with Sam, whatever else comes of that, I think one group has to be created, and that's the one that identifies and does an analysis on the baseline proposal, which is the 250 houses. Because everything we do here is going to compare against that. Because that's going to be our justification for our recommendations.
Good point, good point.
So I also think that this schedule is way too spread out. You were concerned about us losing momentum. We're going to lose momentum.
Okay.
What I'd like to see is I'd like to meet next week. I think a week is enough time for us to digest this without, 2 weeks I've already forgotten it.
Okay.
I'm on to other things. Everybody's got a busy life.
Okay.
I also think that for the next month, you might need to meet every week, even if everybody can't get here. And then we can spread it out.
Okay.
Once our little committees are created, we'll have a better handle on that. Then we can have break-off meetings and then come back every 2 weeks or something like that until we have a recommendation. But you asked where we're going forward. I think that's what we need to do. We need time to look at these things and really understand what they mean to us and what our level of commitment is to each one of those. I, for one, need to review all the zoning stuff. I'm not up to date on all those zoning rules, so I need to know how that applies to all that. We talked about a hybrid approach. I need to understand what that means. How would I break that up? I don't know. So I think we need time to do that, but I don't think we want to stretch that out 2 weeks.
Okay. So the proposal that is here, assuming that it works for the town, it does work for me, would be next Tuesday night, the 10th, and that's sufficient time in your mind, Dan, to let it soak in, read things, and come back and engage.
If we had a problem on the 10th, would anybody be amenable to the 9th, which is a Monday?
That would be better.
Even better? Not good.
I can't, Mondays I typically can't do this. I can be tuned in after the fact.
Well, we'll check both nights because we don't know ourselves. So we'll get out to everybody tomorrow the second we find out what we're available to do. And if anybody has questions like zoning issues and you need some help with that stuff, we're more than happy to meet with you.
I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, you should all read it. It's the right thing to do. But if anybody has questions or concerns, don't hesitate to email us and we'll try and get back to you with anything you need.
A more aggressive meeting schedule, not everybody's going to make every meeting. We do our best.
Big group, you can't expect it.
Well, in a more aggressive meeting schedule, once we get to, as Ray is lobbying for subcommittees, it becomes less important. There's the time between the meetings, the subcommittees can actually do a lot of work and come back with things that are more crystallized and allow people to have more input on. So for next meeting, The vision for success for the next meeting is clarity on scenarios, a vision for how the work will get done, which means whether it's by alternative or it's defining alternatives and a matrix assessment going across, would then carry beyond that was some kind of decision matrix of what the recommendation would be downstream of that, but just an evaluation matrix which could lead to a decision matrix based on how the recommendation came up. Your passion, as we break the group down to use your unique skills, what do you want to be involved in? How do you want to be engaged in the process going forward? And I would say any other suggestions that you think would be helpful to make this committee work better or more effectively. Okay? So that's what I would propose for the next meeting, assuming it's a week from tonight or a week from last night, on the 10th first and the 9th second. Is there anything else that you want to have up there? This is a lot for 120 minutes. Is there anything else you want to have up here for next week?
Assignment of subcommittees.
Okay. I'm going to put, Ray, I'm going to put division of responsibilities, because there could be a committee, or Sam could say, listen, you get me these alternatives, I'll work the financial things on my own, I got my own tools, I'll come back for the next meeting and I'll give you, so. But we need clarity on that. Who's doing what?
It's all voluntary, whoever you want to volunteer for.
Absolutely. Okay, don't check my spelling when I go fast, I don't check it. Communication, going forward. The only person who's really authorized to talk to the press about the work of the committee is the supervisor. There's a liability issue there, and there's a clarity issue there. No one has a gag order, so if you want to speak for yourself to somebody, then speak for yourself. I've just asked you, please don't report on the work of the committee, because that's the supervisor's responsibility, and when you do that from your own perspective, you could make the work of the committee be harder going forward. This is about us being together as a team and going forward. So I would just ask, anybody calls you, wants an interview, wants whatever, send them to there, unless you're talking for myself. But when you get into the process of the committee's work, then there will be people who feel badly about that, because it may not be communicated exactly what their intention is. And because we've only had one meeting, I know for a fact that there's lots of people who have not had their say about this process and will send the wrong message.
What would be my responsibility to my association?
I would tell you've got a process, but you're engaged in it.
I just can't speak for them, I can just speak for myself, is that what you're saying?
As far as the press goes on the work of the committee, you can speak for your
No,
association.
not the press, my homeowners association.
Yeah, you can tell them how you feel about that.
Okay.
I'm just asking you, please don't talk to the press. Yes.
One of the things you can do, just to kind of take the pressure off of yourselves, is this is all going to be on our website. They can go in and watch tonight's meeting if they want to, so they can get a feel for themselves as to what you're wrestling with. So you don't have to put yourselves in a position of having to deal with.
Great suggestion, Jim. Thank you. Yes, Jim.
In terms of sharing information with everybody, if this were a business decision on my part, the first thing I would do, because I don't know 16 people here, or 14 people, I would put up a forum so we can discuss ideas in between the meetings, okay? And a forum, if anybody's savvy on the internet, I mean, I could certainly do one, but I'm sure somebody that's done one before could spend maybe an hour and put one up and put all the members in here as guests of it, and it would just be closed to us. so we could talk about some of these things. Does anybody in the group have somebody in their family or in their business, or somebody have any expertise in doing a forum? I know everything that I do in life the last 20 years, I go to forums to learn and to find out, what we're supposed to be doing, what we can be doing with something.
Can't you accomplish in 5 minutes talking what it takes a half an hour to do on a keyboard?
With you I can, but what if you and I talk about something that might be interested to another 10 people? On a forum, they read it.
Yeah. I'm weak technologically, so that's where I come from.
I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying we should, I'm throwing it out there. No.
I fully expect that before the work goes too far, that there'll be some kind of a wiki or forum that the group can connect on. And I don't know whether it's a total one or whether it's by subcommittees, because I don't know how you're going to work yet. But yes, there needs to be something, it's brought up at least 3 times tonight, where you're connected digitally for those who have the passion and energy to do that. Is there anything else that needs to be done tonight?
Adjourn.
Most importantly, yes, Jim?
We were talking about changing the date for next week. You had a concern about the 24th, and I heard somebody else did too. Is that something you want us to look at, as maybe the 23rd as an option versus the 24th?
Yes.
Yeah. So you look at the 23rd?
Can we change it?
We have to go through the town to see what they're doing.
Yes, we do. We have to verify that for you tomorrow.
And we probably shouldn't conflict with, we have a confliction with the Penfield High School graduation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's
I don't
what I'm
know
thinking.
if anybody else is impacted, like other parent. I don't know if anybody else has.
That's the 23rd of June.
That's the 23rd.
So I don't know if anybody else was impacted, then I'm not, but I don't know if any parents would have to be there instead of, or any other.
You have a problem with the 23rd, though, don't you?
May 23rd?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to come for an hour here, and then I have to go to my own planning board meeting, that I'll be there until midnight. So, because we've got 2 complex projects that are coming through for seeker determination of significance. So with public hearings, that'll be, so when you're done here, you can tune into my channel and watch things in Irondequoit and see how that's going.
Okay, so we've got a proposal of the 24th going to the 10th. Are we looking at another?
Or the 9th.
What's that? Or the 9th, yeah.
Or the 9th. And do you want to do the 23rd?
And plug
or
in
just let it go?
Keep moving.
I would say you keep that as an option, and if we don't need it, we can drop it personally.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Ron, do we also want to throw out there, tonight we just picked 6 to 8 as a time frame? Is that the best time frame for the group? I mean, obviously trying to get 22 people have consensus is
Baseball games.
not easy, but
We don't want to break out at 7 o'clock or something like that. We'll continue to feed you.
At least take some home with you as well.
Yeah.
I can't eat all of it.
Yeah, I don't know whether we post it on the website or whether they'll send you a direct email. We've got everybody's email. So if anybody looks at that list and your contact email was not right, please don't leave the room without me.
Yeah.
Okay, are we done? I think we're
Thank
toast.
you.
Thank you very much for staying late.
Thanks a lot.